Chapter 590. As soon as Yi-chun finished speaking, Flaming Tiger Yi-lin, who was talking to treasure-hunting fish in the main hall of the city lord's mansion, paused for a moment before nodding hurriedly. "Yes, brother." "Sister Lin, did master say something?" When the treasure-hunting fish little Yu heard this, she was instantly stunned. She then looked at Yin-hu and Yi-lin with an adorable expression and asked. Treasure-hunting fish did not hear Yi-chen's voice. Otherwise, it would not have been so stunned. Flaming Tiger Yi-lin nodded with a smile and said, "Brother and I have special communication channels with each other." "Big brother, you and I have a special communication channel. As long as the distance between us and Big Brother is not beyond the coverage of Big Brother's soul consciousness, we can directly transmit our thoughts to each other." "Is that so? Why did Master tell me?" When the treasure-hunting fish, who had transformed into a 5-year-old lowly, heard this, she immediately revealed an aggrieved expression. She then looked at Yin-hu and Yi-lin and asked with some jealousy. Flaming Tiger Yi-lin paused for a moment before glaring at treasure-hunting fish and saying, "Little brat, you're still so young." "Brat, how old are you?" "Big Brother is taking care of you." Yes, that must be it." Treasure-hunting fish, who had transformed into a 5-year-old Lolita, nodded happily as her eyes lit up. Flaming Tiger Yi-lin could not help but secretly smile when treasure-hunting fish accepted her explanation. She then looked at Su-chu, who was anxiously waiting for Yi-chun in the main hall, and said, "Brother, I have some matters to attend to. I wanted to go back first." "Will Master be in danger?" Su-chu was stunned when he heard Flaming Tiger Yi-lin's words. He then looked at Flaming Tiger Yi-lin, the powerful Lolita, and asked seriously. After Yi-chun brought Su-chu to the real world, they immediately encountered a giant golden bird with a wingspan of 1,000 meters. Su-chu saw the entire process with his own eyes. He even saw Yi-chun chasing after the giant golden bird. It was precisely because of this that Su-chu asked such a question. After all, Yi-chun had been chasing the giant golden bird for nearly 2 hours. It would be strange if Su-chu wasn't worried about Yi-chen's safety. As for Flaming Tiger Yi-lin's strength, Su-chu did not think so at first. To be precise, in Su-chu's eyes, the Flaming Tiger Yi-lin and the treasure-hunting fish little fish were Yi-chen's younger sisters and did not have much strength. However, when Yi-chun chased after the golden giant bird and left Samsara City, the Flaming Tiger Yi-lin talked to the treasure-hunting fish. Because the treasure-hunting fish mentioned the monster tribe, the Flaming Tiger Yi-lin unscrupulously released a shocking pressure and a strong killing intent. After Su-chu sensed it, he had a clear understanding of the Flaming Tiger Yi-lin. At that moment, Su-chu realized that his lord's eldest sister's strength was truly terrifying. Even if it was him, Su-chu, against Yi-lin, he wouldn't be able to last a single move. At that moment, Su-chu was disappointed. After all, the Flaming Tiger Yi-lin appeared to be a young girl. Damn, such an existence actually had such strong strength. How could Su-chu not compare himself with the Flaming Tiger Yi-lin? But after the comparison, Su-chu was even more disappointed. He was no match for Yi-lin. Fortunately, Su-chu quickly walked out of his disappointment because his lord, Yi-chun, was even stronger. Moreover, Yi-chun thought highly of him. Not only did he appoint him as a general, he even gave him equipment and a Xiantian cultivation method. Although Su-chu was not as smart as those historical officials, he knew one thing. To be able to follow Yi-chun, his future would definitely not end at the saint level. It was also because of this that Su-chu did not lose his confidence, even though he had suffered a heavy blow because of the Flaming Tiger Yi-lin. Of course, in contrast, Su-chu was even more determined to follow Yi-chun, because he was touched, because he was grateful, and also because Yi-chun could give him a future. When the Flaming Tiger Yi-lin heard Su-chu's question, she was slightly taken aback. Then, she said, "Don't worry. Big Brother is very strong. In this world, there is no one who can match Big Brother. If there must be a match, it will be after Ascension." Ascension? When Su-chu heard this, he was stunned. Then, he remembered that Yi-chun could fly in the air. This was an ability that could only be obtained after ascending. For a moment, all kinds of doubts surged in Su Chu's mind. When the flaming tiger Yilin saw Su Chu's confused expression, she could not help but smile. Then, she said, I won't explain the details. I won't explain the specific reasons. When you go to the Samsara city in that world, my military counselor and general will answer your questions. Don't delay and go back quickly. My brother wants you to go back. There must be something he wants you to do in that world. Okay. When Su Chu heard this, he immediately came back to his senses and hurriedly nodded. After saying this, he disappeared with a thought. The reason Yi Chun wanted Su Chu to return to the game world was to have Su Chu answer Yi Chun's question of Yi Chun is not at the inn. After all, Lu Hong had already issued an edict to betroth Princess De Qiao and Princess Changle Xiao Qiao to Yi Chun. Moreover, Lu Hong had also asked Zhang Li to find the imperial astronomer and choose the nearest auspicious date. Once the date of the wedding was set, Lu Hong would definitely ask Zhang Li to contact Yi Chun and have Yi Chun make preparations. He would even send someone to teach Yi Chun the wedding etiquette and things to take note of. If Yi Chun was not there and Su Chu did not return to the game world, then the matter would be blown out of proportion. Because Yi Chun was not there and no one knew, it meant that Yi Chun had run away from the marriage. That's right, he had run away from the marriage. After all, Yi Chun already knew that Lu Hong had bestowed a marriage and that the wedding was about to begin. However, Yi Chun had disappeared. If this was not running away from the marriage, then what was? It was also to prevent the situation of running away from the marriage that Yi Chun had asked Su Chu to return to the game world. Su Chu's brain was not as smart as those historical officials, but he could still understand Yi Chun's intentions. Therefore, after hearing Flaming Tiger Yilin's words, Su Chu did not hesitate to return to the game world. Northeast of Samsara City, Yi Chun's residence. Yi Chun, who had instructed Flaming Tiger Yilin to pass the message, was preparing to use his consciousness to search for the Green Flood Dragon King's whereabouts. Who would have thought that, just as his primordial spirit moved, the system's notification sounded out again. Ding! Congratulations to player Yi Chun for successfully transcending the tribulation. Purple Palace solidity plus 10,000 permanently. As soon as the system's notification ended, Yi Chun's eyes widened. Holy shit, there was actually such a reward. The Purple Palace was the place where one's primordial spirit was stored. The more solid it was, the less likely it would be invaded by external evil. The so-called external evil could be some kind of evil power or the consciousness of others, or even the primordial spirit of others. Amongst these, the most serious one was the invasion of another's primordial spirit. Once the Purple Palace was successfully invaded by another's primordial spirit, a battle between the primordial spirits would ensue. If the primordial spirit could not win, then there was only one outcome: being possessed. And now, because Yi Chun had successfully transcended the tribulation, he was directly rewarded with a permanent plus 10,000 permanent Purple Palace solidity. This meant that from now on, when facing anyone below the level of a demi-sage, even if the other party's primordial spirit was far stronger than Yi Chun's, Yi Chun would not have to worry about being possessed. Thinking of this, Yi Chun could not help but laugh maniacally at the sky. He had struck gold this time. Just as Yi Chun thought of this, the seed of the red lotus of hellfire, which he had just refined, suddenly exploded in Yi Chun's Purple Palace solidity. Then, it turned into a red lotus that alternated between reality and illusion. In the next second, Yi Chun's primordial spirit flew directly to the center of the refinement and sat down cross-legged. Seeing this, Yi Chun was momentarily stunned. At this moment, the system's notification sounded out again. Ding! Congratulations to player Yi Chun for successfully forging the Red Lotus Divine Platform. Chapter 591. As soon as the system notification ended, Yi Chun, who was pleasantly surprised by the unexpected harvest, was stunned. Red Lotus Immortal Foundation. Didn't he directly break through to the Immortal Foundation realm? How did he succeed in forging his Immortal Foundation? The realm after the Nirvana realm was the Immortal Foundation realm. And because Yi Chun had killed a special player from the demon race, he had obtained a reward of +1 in his cultivation. Under normal circumstances, Yi Chun should have advanced from the Nirvana realm to the Immortal Foundation realm. But the reality was that Yi Chun directly skipped the Immortal Foundation realm and entered the Divine Martial realm with the help of the Primordial Cultivator. This result caused Yi Chun to directly skip the process of forging his Immortal Foundation. Yi Chun knew that this result wasn't good because it might affect his ascension to immortality. But Yi Chun had no choice. Skipping the Immortal Foundation realm was skipping the Immortal Foundation realm. It was impossible to go back and forge his Immortal Foundation. In Yi Chun's opinion, the Immortal Foundation shouldn't be able to be forged. Who would have thought that the result wasn't like that? Not only was the Immortal Foundation automatically forged, it even became the Red Lotus Immortal Foundation that Yi Chun had never heard of before. Could it be that the primordial cultivators didn't forge their Immortal Foundation when they broke through to the Divine Martial realm? They just needed a special medium. Yi Chun couldn't help but think this way. After all, the seeds of the Red Lotus of Karmic Fire had automatically disintegrated and formed the Red Lotus Immortal Foundation in Yi Chun's mind palace. That must be it. Damn, if he didn't obtain the seeds of the Red Lotus of Karmic Fire, wouldn't it mean that he could forget about successfully forging his Immortal Foundation? F***CK. Did the primordial cultivators have to be so perverted? Thinking of this, Yi Chun couldn't help but look at the Red Lotus Immortal Foundation that was sitting on his primordial spirit. In the next second, a message appeared in Yi Chun's mind. Red Lotus Immortal Foundation. Immortal Foundation with Tao Aura. Ability: incinerate all negative energy. Characteristics: 1. Gather immortal energy in a large area. 2. Greatly increase comprehension. 3. Greatly increase the power of magic arts. 4. Greatly increase the power of magic arts. 5. Seek good fortune and avoid calamity. After Yi Chun finished reading the introduction of the Red Lotus Immortal Platform, his eyes suddenly widened. F***CK. Immortal Taoist Rhyme. Yi Chun would never have thought that the Red Lotus Immortal Foundation would actually be a Tao Immortal Foundation. Even in his previous life, Yi Chun had only heard rumors about this grade of Immortal Foundation. That's right, it was a rumor. According to the legends, above the 9-level Immortal Foundation, there were still the Peak Grade Immortal Foundation, the Peak Grade Immortal Foundation, and the Supreme Grade Immortal Foundation. And above these 3 grades, there was still a Peak Grade Immortal Foundation known as the Tao Foundation. Putting aside the Taoist Immortal Foundation, just the Supreme Grade, and Supreme Grade Immortal Foundation alone would bring great benefits to a cultivator. For example, in terms of magic arts, a cultivator with a 9-level Immortal Foundation would need a year to cultivate a certain magic art. But for those with Peak Grade Immortal Foundations, they would only need half a year. If it was a person with a Peerless Great Immortal Foundation, this time would be reduced to 3 months. If one had a Transcendent Grade Immortal Foundation, then the time required to cultivate this technique would be reduced to 1 month. This was already perverse enough. After all, it would save a lot of time. But if the might of the magic art was also included, then it wouldn't be as simple as being perverse. More accurately speaking, for the same magic art, the might of a Transcendent Grade Immortal Foundation would be twice as strong as the might of a Peak Grade Immortal Foundation. If it was a Peak Grade Immortal Foundation, then the might of a Peak Grade Immortal Foundation would be twice as strong as that of a Peak Grade Immortal Foundation. And, similarly, a Peak Grade Immortal Foundation would be twice as strong as a 9-level Immortal Foundation. Hence, the higher the grade of the Immortal Foundation, the greater the benefits a cultivator would receive. And when it came to the Tao Foundation, it would be even stronger than a Transcendent Grade Immortal Foundation. However, starting from the Peak Grade Immortal Foundation, it was extremely difficult to obtain one. If one were to use numbers to describe it, it would be 1 in 10,000. This wasn't the most important thing. The most important thing was that even those who obtained a Peak Grade Immortal Foundation wouldn't know how it came about. Even Yi Chun, who was reborn, didn't know the method to establish a Peak Grade Immortal Foundation. It was also because of this reason that after Yi Chun reached the Nirvana realm, he only wanted to establish a 9-level immortal foundation, which was the strongest among ordinary immortal foundations. Who would have thought that Yi Chun would actually step into the immortal foundation realm and lose the chance to establish his immortal foundation? But in the end, Yi Chun unexpectedly established his immortal foundation. Not only that, his immortal foundation was even stronger than a transcendent grade immortal foundation. More accurately speaking, immortal foundation with a Tao aura was much more perverse compared to a transcendent grade immortal foundation. Just from its ability and characteristics, one could tell. Let's talk about its ability first. It could incinerate all negative energy. This would ensure that when Yi Chun broke through in the future, he wouldn't be disturbed by heart demons. Even if heart demons appeared, they would be incinerated by the Red Lotus Immortal Foundation. If others encountered heart demons, they would have to deal with it themselves. If they failed, they would enter cultivation deviation and lose their sense of self. In fact, they might even die. As for Yi Chun, he didn't have to worry about this. And from today onwards, he didn't have to worry about problems with his state of heart. He could release himself as he wished. Naturally, this wasn't the most important thing. The most important thing was that from now onwards, Yi Chun had the ability to be immune to the most troublesome soul techniques. The destructive power of soul techniques was extremely strong. They directly targeted the soul. Without a soul-type treasure or a primordial grade treasure to protect one's soul, one would definitely be affected. And now, Yi Chun had a Tao Aura Immortal Foundation. The Red Lotus Immortal Foundation, he didn't have to worry about soul attacks at all. After all, the essence of soul techniques was the usage of negative energy. And these were only the basic abilities of the Red Lotus Immortal Foundation. If one were to consider its characteristics, it would be even more perverse. For example, the characteristic of being able to gather immortal chi in a large area. It could ensure that when Yi Chun ascended to immortality, he would be able to obtain a large amount of immortal chi. This way, Yi Chun could use more immortal chi to refine his physical body and primordial spirit. From there, his physical body and primordial spirit would be improved even more. If it were any other cultivator, when they ascended to immortality, the heavenly Tao would also send immortal chi to refine their physical body and primordial spirit. However, they would basically accept it passively. It was impossible for them to take the initiative to absorb immortal chi. Of course, this wasn't the most important thing. The most important thing was that immortal chi appeared in a large area and would dissipate. To be precise, every time immortal chi appeared, a cultivator would only absorb 10% to 20% of it. The remaining 80% to 90% would automatically dissipate into the world. But for Yi Chun, this situation that would cause a headache to cultivators would never happen. Of course, it might dissipate, but it would definitely not be a lot. As for the reason, it was because the Red Lotus Immortal Foundation could gather immortal chi in a large area. Just one of the characteristics of the Red Lotus Immortal Foundation could bring Yi Chun so many benefits. If the other characteristics were taken into account, it would be even more enviable. For example, it could greatly increase one's comprehension, which would allow Yi Chun to do everything more easily and conveniently. It could greatly increase the power of one's spells, which would allow Yi Chun's already powerful spells to become even more powerful. It could greatly increase the power of one's mystique. After all, the power of one's mystique was only related to one's cultivation realm. But for Yi Chun, with the support of the Red Lotus Immortal Foundation, the power of one's mystique would increase by a large margin. As for the last characteristic, seeking good fortune and avoiding calamity, it was also very abnormal. This was because it was almost equivalent to a mystique. Although it was an auxiliary mystique, for Yi Chun, this characteristic of the Red Lotus Immortal Foundation was simply too good. One had to know that Yi Chun would soon ascend to the untainted world. There were golden immortals everywhere, and sky immortals were as common as dogs. There were existences that were stronger than Yi Chun everywhere. With the ability to seek fortune and avoid calamity, Yi Chun could sense danger in advance and avoid falling into desperate situations. In this way, Yi Chun could completely live freely. After all, in the untainted world, even Yi Chun only had 10 chances to die. After 10 times, he would die. No matter who it was, they would not be able to escape the restrictions of the rules of the game. Even Yi Chun was no exception. And with the ability to seek fortune and avoid calamity, Yi Chun's chances of survival were greatly increased. Damn it, it was not that the immemorial age cultivators could not forge their immortal foundation, but they needed a special medium. Luckily, I met the Blood Demon King Xiao Ming and killed him to obtain the Lotus Seed of the Red Lotus of Hellfire. Moreover, I even had the idea of controlling the Red Lotus of Hellfire and refining the Lotus Seed of the Red Lotus of Hellfire. Otherwise, how could one of the strongest immortal foundations, the Red Lotus Immortal Foundation, be successfully forged? Thinking of this, Yi Chun could not help but laugh wildly. Ha ha! Awesome! Chapter 592. Yi Chun laughed for a long time before he stopped. Then, with a thought, he released his divine sense. In the next second, Yi Chun's divine sense covered a range of 200,000 kilometers. Every blade of grass, every tree, every flower, every leaf from the smallest ant in the soil to the largest mountain was within the range of Yi Chun's divine sense. Yi Chun's primordial spirit could sense all objects, whether they were stationary or moving, clearly and meticulously. There was nothing he could miss out on. Even if there was a large rat trying to steal a bird's egg from 200,000 kilometers away, Yi Chun's spiritual sense could see it clearly. After the time it took to brew a cup of tea, Yi Chun withdrew his spiritual sense and opened his eyes. Sure enough, his divine sense had doubled because of the Red Lotus Divine Platform. Yi Chun was in the God martial arts realm at the moment. Under normal circumstances, Yi Chun's divine sense could roughly cover a range of 100,000 kilometers. However, Yi Chun had a vague feeling that his divine sense would improve a lot because of the Red Lotus Divine Platform. After all, his divine sense couldn't wait to sit on the Red Lotus Divine Platform when it was formed. If there were no benefits, Yi Chun's divine sense wouldn't have done this subconsciously. In the end, it was as Yi Chun had guessed. His spiritual sense had really increased. Furthermore, it had doubled. Not bad, not bad. His divine sense could already cover a range of 200,000 kilometers. Now, it wouldn't be a problem to find the Three Immortal Island. Thinking of this, Yi Chun couldn't help raising his eyebrows. There were countless treasures of heaven and earth on the Three Immortal Island. Once they found the Three Immortal Island, Yi Chun and the entire Samsara city would benefit. However, Yi Chun's divine sense had only been able to cover a pitiful range of 10,000 meters at the beginning. With such a small range, it would be difficult to find the Three Immortal Island in the vast sea. Of course, this was in the past. Now, Yi Chun's divine sense was not as weak as before. It could support Yi Chun to find the Three Immortal Island. After all, Yi Chun's divine sense could already cover a radius of 200,000 miles. No matter how well the Three Immortal Island could hide, it could not escape the detection of Yi Chun's divine sense. Of course, it was impossible to find the Three Immortal Island in one go. However, it was impossible not to find it if one wandered back and forth on the sea dozens of times. Now, it was time to find the Green WYRM King. Yi Chun wasn't sure if the Green Dragon King was the lewd stick demon king from his previous life. After all, in Yi Chun's previous life, a total of 3 green flood dragons had appeared. And now, Yi Chun had already confirmed the identity of the Green Dragon King. It was the lewd stick demon king from his previous life, who liked both men and women. This was because Yi Chun knew very well that the lewd stick demon king's special mark in his previous life was the black reverse scale. That's right, it was the black reverse scale. It was different from the reverse scales of the other 2 green flood dragons and became the unique mark of the lewd stick demon king. It was precisely because Yi Chun knew this that he had specially checked the reverse scale of the Azure Flood Dragon King when he released his spiritual sense earlier. Then, he was able to confirm its identity. If it was an ordinary demon, Yichen would not pay special attention to it. However, the Green Dragon King mentioned by the 50,000 players that Yi Chun had killed was an exception. This was because it had a special connate spiritual treasure, the aura-concealing pearl. If Yi Chun obtained the aura-concealing pearl, it would be easier for Yi Chun to plunder the treasures of the primordial world after he ascended. As for the reason, it was very simple. The aura-concealing pearl could ensure that Yi Chun would not be discovered by beings below the golden immortal level. Even if Yi Chun walked past a demon immortal openly, he would not be discovered. Of course, if Yi Chun deliberately made a sound or deliberately let the demon immortal see him, then it would be a different story. However, would Yi Chun be so stupid? Of course not. If Yi Chun wanted to plunder treasures of the primordial world, he would naturally make a fortune in secret. How could he deliberately provoke the experts of the demon race? At this thought, Yi Chun's lips curled up. However, in an instant, Yi Chun frowned. That bastard used the aura-concealing pearl. The green flood dragon that Yi Chun's divine sense had locked on has suddenly disappeared from Yi Chun's divine sense. However, after a few seconds, Yi Chun was suddenly stunned. Then the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. It should still be there. At this thought, Yi Chun's mind moved. In the next second, the space in front of Yi Chun suddenly distorted. After glancing at the distorted space, Yi Chun stepped into it and disappeared. In the real world, 2,200 miles northeast of Samsara City, on the shore of a small pool with a diameter of 100 meters, two men were carrying a woman who was completely naked and tied up. They arrived at this place. The two men did not have the slightest intention of looking at the woman. Not only that, but they looked at the pool with some horror. Whoa! The tied-up woman's mouth was stuffed with a cloth. When she saw the pool, her eyes suddenly showed a look of despair. Then, she struggled hard and even wanted to shout something. However, it was useless. No matter how she struggled, how she resisted, how she shouted, it was useless. She could not break free at all. The rope that tied her up was as thick as 2 thumbs. The two men carrying the woman looked at each other, then carefully put the woman in the center of 4 tree stumps that were pressed into the ground by brute force. The 4 tree stumps were 2 meters high, and there was a thick rope on each of them. The moment the two men put the woman down, the quiet pool suddenly began to roll. When the two men saw this, they shuddered at the same time. At this moment, a ferocious snake head with a single horn came out of the pool. If one looked at the snake head alone, one could tell that it was a python that came out of the pool. However, if one counted the horn on its head, then its identity directly became another existence. It was a flood dragon. Of course, this flood dragon was just a deformed one. Because the dragon head had not yet formed, strictly speaking, it could not be called a flood dragon. However, it was reasonable to call it a flood dragon. After all, it already had the unique pressure of a flood dragon. Green Flood Dragon King, we have caught another woman for you. When the two men saw this, they hurriedly knelt on the ground and bowed respectfully. Their voices were very flattering, but the fear in their words could not be concealed at all. When the Green Flood Dragon heard this, it directly looked at the woman in the center of the 4 tree stumps and then roared. Quick, tie her hands and feet properly. Yes, yes, Green Flood Dragon King. When the two men heard this, they hurriedly nodded and untied the rope on the woman's body. Then, they forcefully restrained the woman and tied her hands and feet to the 4 tree stumps. In the blink of an eye, the naked woman was spread out in the middle of the 4 tree stumps. Each of her vitals were clearly visible. After doing this, the two men did not dare to stay any longer. They hurriedly bowed to the Green Flood Dragon and said, Green Flood Dragon King, we will take our leave first. When the Green Flood Dragon heard this, it looked at the two men coldly and roared. Next time, bring 10 women over. Otherwise, you will all die. When the two men heard this, they suddenly shuddered and hurriedly nodded. Yes, yes, Green Flood Dragon King. Next time, we will definitely bring 10 women over with you. The Green Flood Dragon King nodded in satisfaction and said scram. After that, it directly crawled out of the pool and revealed its 100-meter-long body covered in green scales. Only the reverse scale was black. When the two men saw this, they hurriedly nodded and left the place in a panic. The green flood dragon did not even look at the two men. It directly went to the woman and stood up. In the next second, a strange red object that was 2 meters long and as thick as a grown man's leg came out of the green flood dragon's body and aimed at the woman. Don't! Don't! An extremely terrified scream suddenly came from a woman who was in complete despair. When the green flood dragon heard this, it immediately let out an extremely perverted laugh. Then, it prepared to forcefully attack the woman's most important part. At this moment, the space near the 4 tree stumps suddenly distorted. In the next second, a young man stepped out and appeared here. Chapter 593. The green dragon's eyes narrowed when it saw the young man who suddenly appeared. Appearing out of thin air meant teleportation. Floating in the air meant that one's cultivation level was at least above the mortal evolution state. How could the green dragon not know what these two situations meant? Who are you? The green flood dragon stared at the man who had suddenly appeared with a gloomy expression and asked. The girl, who was in a state of panic and despair, could not help but be stunned when she heard this. Then, she subconsciously followed the gaze of the green dragon and looked over. In the next second, the woman's eyes revealed an extremely hopeful gaze. Then, she shouted loudly at the young man who suddenly appeared, "Brother, I'm sorry. You have Beach. Lord Beach, save me. Save me. Yi-chun, you're the strongest person of a human race. Yi-chun." When the azure dragon heard this, its pupils constricted once more as it cried out in surprise. Clearly, not only did the green dragon know of Yi-chun's existence, but it was also very wary of Yi-chun. Otherwise, it wouldn't be like this. When Yi-chun heard this, he glanced at the woman indifferently. Then, he looked at the green dragon and said, "Hand over the chi concealment bead." "Who are you? How do you know I have the chi concealment bead?" The green dragon's eyes widened as it roared. Yi-chun was reborn. How could he not know that the lewd stick demon king had the chi concealment bead in his previous life? Of course, Yi-chun wouldn't tell the green dragon about this. Yi-chun raised a brow and said, "Hand over the chi concealment bead, and I'll leave you with your body intact. Hand over the aura concealing bead, and I'll leave your corpse intact. If you don't, you'll die a horrible death." Yi-chun was determined to obtain the aura concealment bead. However, the aura concealment bead had the ability to hide one's aura. If the Azure Flood Dragon had a teleportation Jade Talisman or an invincible Jade Talisman and wanted to escape, it would be fine if Yi-chun could catch up to it. After all, the Chi concealment bead was too strong. Yi-chun was only at the God Martial state. No matter how strong his spirit sense was, he wouldn't be able to detect the green dragon's Chi concealment bead. To be precise, as long as the green dragon could escape from Yi-chun's sight and hide, Yi-chun wouldn't be able to use his spirit sense to find the green dragon that had activated the Chi concealment bead's Chi concealment ability. In fact, Yi-chun was only able to find the green dragon's tracks because of Yi-chun's luck. After all, the green dragon was in the pool when Yi-chun first detected it and didn't activate the Chi concealment bead. Otherwise, Yi-chun wouldn't be able to detect the green dragon's tracks at all. Later, when Yi-chun finished his detection and was ready to set off, the green dragon used the Chi concealment bead, and its Chi disappeared. At first, Yi-chun thought that the green flood dragon had sensed the danger and fled. But at that moment, the woman who was tied up and carried to the side of the pool appeared. When Yi-chun discovered this, he naturally linked the Azure Flood Dragon, who was known as the Fiend King of Lust in his previous life, to women for his hobby of playing with women. After that, Yi-chun went to the pool without hesitation and found the green dragon. If it weren't for the woman who was suddenly tied up, Yi-chun might have skipped the pool and gone somewhere else. After all, after the green dragon's chi disappeared, Yi-chun's first thought was that the green dragon had escaped, not that it was still in the pool. And this was the fundamental reason why Yi-chun was lucky. If it weren't for luck, Yi-chun wouldn't have found the green dragon. After hearing Yi Chen's threat, the green dragon's eyes widened and it roared angrily. Yi Chen, don't think that I'll be afraid of you, just because you're strong. The chi concealment bead was the green dragon's treasure. How could it be willing to hand it over? Hearing this, Yi Chen narrowed his eyes, raised his right hand, and slashed at the green dragon. The green dragon was shocked when it saw this. However, it didn't see any trace of Yi Chen releasing magic, nor did it see Yi Chen use a weapon. At this moment, the green dragon was stunned. However, just as it was puzzled, the green flood dragon suddenly felt as though something had been forcefully cut off. At this moment, there was a bang. A thick blood-red whip without any scales smashed heavily onto the ground. At the same time, there was the sound of blood spurting out. Hearing the voice, the green flood dragon froze for a moment before looking down. When it saw the dragon whip that brought it endless joy lying quietly on the ground with blood spurting out of its body, the dragon was stunned. At this moment, a heart-wrenching pain struck, and the green flood dragon let out an extremely mournful howl. Roar! In the next second, the horned head of the green flood dragon smashed heavily on the ground with a bang, and then it rolled violently. Whip my whip! Roar! The green dragon's miserable howl was filled with pain, killing intent, hatred, and anger. As the green dragon rolled back and forth and twisted, the bloody light in its eyes became more and more intense. Seeing this, Yi Chen grabbed the air with his left hand. Then, he grabbed the naked woman tied to the 4 tree stumps and threw her casually. In the next second, the woman escaped into the distorted space and disappeared. Although Yi Chen was not a good person, Yi Chen would not let the green dragon kill the woman who helped him once. After all, it was because of her that Yi Chen found the green dragon. Yi Chen would not deny this. Thus, Yi Chen acted without the slightest hesitation to save the woman. As for whether the woman would live or not, Yi Chen did not care and would not care. Just after the woman was thrown thousands of miles away by Yi Chen's spatial ability, 100 blood-red beads suddenly appeared in the green dragon's mouth. Then, it spat them directly at Yi Chen. Yi Chen furrowed his brows when he saw the hundreds of blood-red pearls shooting towards him. Obscene Stick of Firewood. Obscene Stick of Firewood was the unique poison of the Green Dragon King in Yi Chen's previous life. It could be spread through the air and water. More terrifyingly, it could be spread through divine sense, magic power, and sex. Once encountering this poison, the cultivators could not defend themselves. Instead, they could only retreat quickly. Because this poison was almost incurable. Even if they resisted, they would be poisoned. If they chose to resolve it with the opposite sex, they would also infect the opposite sex. It was also because the Green Dragon King's poison was too perverse that the Green Dragon King, who caused so much trouble in Yi Chen's previous life, was never killed. Even if the Green Dragon King was chased by countless people and was beaten half to death, it would not really die. This was because once the Green Dragon King was beaten half to death, it would automatically activate its special ability, the 10,000 miles poison cloud technique. To be precise, once the Green Dragon King's vitality dropped to half, its special ability would automatically activate. Then the Obscene Stick of Firewood would cover a radius of 10,000 miles. After that, it would be very lively. And this was the main reason why Yi Chen did not directly kill the Green Dragon King after finding it. If Yi Chen was touched by this poison, although Yi Chen's mind would not be messed up due to the Red Lotus Divine Platform, it would still affect him. To be precise, little Yi Chen would raise the flag for a month. Of course, this was not the most important thing. The most important thing was that even if Yi Chen controlled the impulse, little Yi Chen would automatically release it every 2 hours. The most terrifying thing was that every time it released it, it would spew out a large amount of essence. Once or twice, even 10 or 100 times, it would not matter. Yi Chen's physical body was so strong that it was a mess. He was not afraid of this at all. But if it had to be released 24 hours a day for a month, even Yi Chen would not be able to withstand it. Chapter 594. The corners of Yi Chen's mouth twitched involuntarily at the thought of this. A lecherous stick was indeed difficult to deal with. Yi-Chen had been reborn, so how could he not know this? However, Yi-Chen wasn't afraid, because Yi-Chen had a spatial ability that no one else had. If Yi-Chen didn't want to be hit, he could just teleport away. However, there was one thing that Yi-Chen couldn't deny. To be precise, Yi-Chen's spatial ability could only transfer the poison released by the green WYRM King to an altitude of 10,000 meters or more, and not destroy it. Of course, this wasn't the key. The key was that Yi-Chen's spatial ability couldn't control the green WYRM King's innate ability, the 10,000 miles poison cloud technique. Once the green WYRM King was attacked by Yi-Chen, the 10,000 miles poison cloud technique would automatically activate. If Yi-Chen didn't want to be hit, he could only teleport away. This way, even if Yi-Chen killed the green WYRM King in one blow, it would be useless. This was because the Aura Concealment Pearl was a connate spiritual treasure. No matter how simple or useless it was, it had the ability to automatically protect its owner. To be precise, if Yi-Chen killed the green WYRM King in one blow, the Aura Concealment Pearl would automatically activate the Aura Concealment ability and take the green WYRM King's soul away. At that time, Yi-Chen's consciousness wouldn't be able to lock onto the Aura Concealment Pearl. This way, Yi-Chen's treasure fall coin wouldn't be able to target the Aura Concealment Pearl and attack it. In the end, it would be difficult for Yi-Chen to find the Aura Concealment Pearl. This was the result of Yi-Chen killing the green WYRM King in one blow. If Yi-Chen's attack had only left the green WYRM King half dead, it would have been even worse. At that time, the green WYRM King would have activated the 10,000 miles poison cloud technique and activated the Aura Concealment Pearl. After that, the Aura Concealment ability of the Aura Concealment Pearl would be activated. In the end, the green WYRM King would escape without a trace, and Yi-Chen wouldn't be able to find it. This was different from when Yi-Chen had probed the green WYRM King for the first time. At that time, the green Flood Dragon King wasn't in danger, and it was 1,000 meters below the lake. The green WYRM King believed that it was very safe there, and it didn't think that there was any powerful existence that could find it when it was 1,000 meters underwater. Therefore, it did not use the Aura Concealing Bead's ability to conceal its presence. When it floated out of the pool, the Aura Concealment Bead was activated. It didn't matter if the Green Drake King was being cautious, or if it was facing a powerful enemy and didn't want to be found, so it immediately used the Aura Concealing Bead after leaving the pool. In the end, the green WYRM King still used the Aura Concealment Pearl. This made the green WYRM King disappear completely from Yi-Chen's consciousness before he could make a move. At that moment, although Yi-Chen wasn't worried, he still had a headache. After all, the green WYRM King had disappeared from his consciousness. Of course, Yi-Chen still locked onto the place where the green WYRM King had appeared. Although he didn't see the green WYRM King emerge from the water, he saw the tied-up woman and realized that something was wrong. In the end, Yi-Chen teleported there and saw the green WYRM King. Yes, Yi-Chen had found the green WYRM King, and the result was in line with Yi-Chen's expectations. However, the key wasn't to find the green WYRM King, but to get the Aura Concealing Bead. If he wanted to get the Aura Concealing Bead, he couldn't ignore the obscene stick and the 10,000-mile poisonous cloud technique that made Yi-Chen's balls ache. The former wasn't too difficult to deal with. After all, it was spat out by the green WYRM King. However, the latter was different. It was a mystique and was indeed very difficult to deal with. Even Yi-Chen was a little troubled by it. Hold on. The green WYRM King had done a lot of evil, so it should have a lot of karma. CK. I almost forgot about the red karma fire lightning. At this thought, Yi-Chen's eyes lit up. He pointed at the green WYRM King without hesitation. Boom! The moment the thunderous roar sounded, a red bolt of lightning struck the green WYRM King. In the next second, there was a boom. The green dragon was instantly set ablaze by the demonic red flame. Then it began to burn violently. In the blink of an eye, a blood-red lotus rose from the green dragon's body. It was made entirely of flames. What was even more bizarre was that red lightning constantly danced within the lotus flower that was completely made up of flames. At the same time, Yi Chen's mind moved, and the space in front of him distorted. Yi Chen didn't even look at it. He stepped in and disappeared. As soon as Yi Chen disappeared, a deafening cry of agony could be heard. Roar! The scream was tragic and shrill. It sounded like it was in endless pain. This was indeed the case. The Azure Flood Dragon that was struck by the Red Thunder Hellfire, or rather, the Azure Flood Dragon King that was known as the Fiend King of Lust in Yi Chen's previous life. Not only was its body incinerated by the Red Lotus Hellfire, but its soul was also struck by the Red Thunder Hellfire. Pain, boundless pain, fiercely attacked the nerves and soul of the Green Flood Dragon, wave after wave, wave after wave. No, I can't die. When the Green WYRM King sensed that its body and soul were being burned, it was scared out of its wits. It then hid its soul in the aura-concealing bead without hesitation. It didn't think of entering the pool to extinguish the flames on its body. It did, but it rejected the idea in an instant. It didn't have enough time, and it knew very well that the flames burning its body and soul were not simple. It couldn't be extinguished with water. Therefore, it chose its most powerful life-saving method without hesitation, the aura-concealing bead. It wanted to use the aura-concealing bead to protect its soul. At least in this way, it would have a chance to use the power of possession and be reborn. However, when the Green WRM King's soul hid in the aura-concealing bead, the Red Lotus Karma Fire and the Red Lightning followed. At that moment, not only was its soul burned, but its soul imprint in the aura-concealing bead was also burned. Why? Why did this happen? The aura-concealing bead was a connate spiritual treasure. The Green WYRM King's soul, which had lost its connection with the aura-concealing bead, was suddenly terrified. In its opinion, a connate spiritual treasure could protect its soul, but the result made it feel unusually desperate. Not only did the aura-concealing bead fail to protect its soul, but it also lost its connection with its soul. To be precise, the aura-concealing bead was now an ownerless item. No, it couldn't be like this. When the Green WRM King's soul sensed the repulsive force of the aura-concealing bead, it immediately let out a shrill scream. However, it was useless. Its soul was still pushed out of the internal space of the aura-concealing bead by a powerful force. When the Green WRM King's soul appeared outside the aura-concealing bead, it directly triggered the Red Lotus Karma Fire that enveloped its body, which then burst into flames and appeared in an instant. Boom! Boom! The lotus, which was completely composed of flames, rose to 30 meters in an instant. At this moment, a strange wave suddenly emitted from the Green WYRM King's body. In the next second, a thick layer of pink fog suddenly appeared in the sky within a radius of 10,000 miles. 10,000 miles away, Yi Chen, who was quietly floating in the sky, saw this and could not help but smile. Sure enough, I was right. The Red Thunder of Karma Fire was not something that the aura-concealing bead could withstand. Moreover, it could directly deal with the Green WYRM King, even if it had the aura-concealing bead to protect itself. The reason why Yi Chen could withstand the Red Thunder of Karma Fire was because Yi Chen had the Fire Spirit Bead, cultivated the 9 Revolutions mystic art, and cultivated the Divine Night thunder-controlling art. Moreover, he had refined the thunder origin. Compared to Yi Chen, the Green WYRM King was like a beggar. How could it withstand the Red Thunder of Karma Fire with the aura-concealing bead? This way, the situation of the Green WYRM King's soul flying away with the aura-concealing bead would not happen again. After that, Yi Chen's idea of obtaining the aura-concealing bead would become a reality and no longer a fantasy. Just as Yi Chen thought of this, the system's notification rang out. Ding! Congratulations to player Yi Chen for successfully killing a special player from the Demon Clan. Due to his special identity, player Yichun is rewarded with innate attribute points x 300. Chapter 595. When the system notification ended, Yichun was stunned. F*CK. Why did the reward for killing a special player from the Goblin Clan become innate attribute points? Previously, Yichun had killed a giant golden bird. Because of its status as a special player from the Goblin Clan, Yichun had received a +1 realm level reward. This made Yichun subconsciously think that if he continued to kill special players from the Goblin Clan, he would receive similar rewards, such as a huge amount of experience points. Who would have thought that this was not the case at all? Although he had received a reward, it was not experience points, but innate attribute points. Thinking of this, Yichun could not help but look at the attribute panel. When Yichun saw the new 300 innate attribute points, he could not help but smirk. Innate attribute points were actually better. Innate attribute points could be used directly, as long as there were enough of them. They could also directly increase Yichun's realm. In this way, it was no different from obtaining a huge amount of experience points. However, innate attribute points were not only used to increase one's realm, but also to improve one's constitution. This was actually what Yichun wanted to see more. After all, Yichun had been planning to improve his constitution for a long time. In order to improve his constitution, Yichun had set a goal to collect the 5-element Spirit Pearl. In order to refine the 5-element Spirit Pearl and advance to the 5 elements Divine Constitution, Yichun had specially prepared a huge amount of Enlightenment Stones. As for the purpose, Yichun wanted to have a super strong constitution so that he could quickly increase his realm after ascending to the Eldritch World. Innate attribute points could improve one's constitution. Therefore, the more innate attribute points Yichun had, the better. Not bad, not bad. Innate attribute points were even better. Thinking of this, Yichun could not help but raise his eyebrows. Then, he looked at the poisonous cloud that covered a radius of 10,000 miles not far away. The poisonous cloud contained a lewd stick that could spread poison through divine consciousness. It was very strange and terrifying. Naturally, Yichun could not release his divine consciousness to check the area covered by the poisonous cloud at this time. Thinking of this, Yichun moved his mind. In the next second, the cosmos bow and heaven-shaking arrow appeared in front of Yichun. Looking at the cosmos bow floating in front of him, Yichun smirked. He grabbed the cosmos bow with his left hand and knocked 3 heaven-shaking arrows on the bowstring. At this moment, Yichun's right hand grabbed the 3 heaven-shaking arrows without any hesitation. With a pull, the Chinquin bow instantly turned into a full moon. In the next second, Yichun's right hand loosened. Clang! The 3 heaven-shaking arrows left the bowstring and instantly turned into shooting stars. Bang, bang, bang. The sound of an explosion in the air rang out. At this moment, the 3 sky-shaking arrows rushed into the green, poisonous cloud. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The sound of rapid rotation followed closely behind. In the blink of an eye, the 3 heaven-shaking arrows that rushed into the poisonous cloud rolled up a rapidly rotating small tornado. Then it continued to grow bigger and bigger at an extremely fast speed. After a few breaths, a huge tornado with a diameter of more than 100,000 meters appeared. Then it flew toward the sky with the lewd stick that filled the sky. After a cup of tea's time, the lewd stick that covered a radius of 10,000 miles was directly sent to an altitude of 10,000 meters by the huge tornado. Then it rose again and again until it reached 500,000 meters before it stopped. In the next second, an altitude of 500,000 meters, a light burst out. The 3 shocking heaven arrows that had created a gigantic tornado immediately disappeared. 100 meters above the ground, Yichun, who was floating in the air, glanced at the heaven-shaking arrows that returned to his side. He smiled slightly and then put the cosmos bow and heaven-shaking arrows back into his Zifu. The lewd stick could be transmitted through air, water, and even divine sense and magical power. It could be said to be extremely strange, and its power was very abnormal. Unfortunately, no matter how strange and abnormal it couldn't resist the power of the wind without this obscene stick of firewood. He could use his divine sense again. Thinking of this, Yi Chen's primordial spirit moved. Divine sense gushed out in an instant and then covered a radius of 10,000 miles. In the next second, Yi Chen was slightly stunned. Then, the corner of his mouth couldn't help but twitch. The 10,000 miles poisonous cloud technique was indeed a little abnormal. In the place that was previously covered by the poisonous cloud, all the humans and all the demons that were not in the safe cities were all poisoned by the lewd stick. Then, one by one, they turned on a mindless berserk mode. To be precise, the ancient male and female behavior was playing out, and it was playing out on all the poison creatures within a radius of 10,000 miles. Among them, whether it was the human clan or the demon clan, if they could find the opposite sex, they would directly find the opposite sex. If they couldn't find the opposite sex, they would directly find the same sex. What made people even more speechless was that within a radius of 10,000 miles, there were more than 100 pairs of sadomasochistic relationships between humans and demons, and they were in the male and female mode. As for the berserk humans and demons, it wasn't a problem at all for the berserk humans and demons. Of course, this was only if they could find a partner. If they couldn't, they would directly fight against the tree. Looking at the unusually lively scene within a radius of 10,000 miles, Yi Chen let out a long breath. If it weren't for the fact that I could teleport, I would have been King poisoned thinking of this. Yi Chen once again looked at Samsara City. When Yi Chen saw that the treasure-hunting fish and the flaming tiger Yulin in the city lord's mansion of Samsara City and that they were indeed unaffected, he was completely relieved. But in the next second, the corner of Yi Chen's mouth twitched involuntarily. Then, he looked at the female players of the Beauty's Alliance who were not far away. Thousands of miles away, the female players of the Beauty's Alliance were in complete chaos. They were either in groups of 3 or 5, or hugging each other in pairs. As for their clothes, they had long since disappeared without a trace. Damn it, should he care or not? Yi Chen had nothing to do with the Beauty's Alliance. The only connection he had was with Hu Xiaoya. She was Yi Chen's classmate, but Yi Chen didn't have any special feelings for her. Therefore, Yi Chen could completely ignore the lives of the female players of the Beauty's Alliance. But the current situation was a bit special. The female players of the Beauty's Alliance were poisoned because of Yi Chen. After all, it was Yi Chen who attacked the Cyan Dragon, which caused the Cyan Dragon's 10,000-mile poisonous cloud spell to automatically activate. Otherwise, the female players of the Beauty's Alliance wouldn't have been poisoned. And if they weren't poisoned, the current situation wouldn't have happened. If Yi Chen didn't care about the female players of the Beauty's Alliance, they would have either been eaten by monsters or died of dehydration. But even if Yi Chen wanted to care, he couldn't, because Yi Chen didn't know how to cure the poison of the lewd stick. Damn it, I wonder if the rumor that the Cyan Dragon King's whip can cure poison is true. If it's true, then I'll put in some effort to make soup with them. Forget it, I'll put that aside for now. The most important thing is to get the aura concealment bead. Thinking of this, Yi Chen's mind moved, and the space in front of him suddenly distorted. In the next second, Yi Chen stepped in and disappeared. Chapter 596. Beside the 100-meter-wide pool, the space suddenly distorted. In the next second, Yi Chen took a step forward and appeared here. Looking at the ashes left behind by the green dragon, Yi Chen curled his lips in disdain and then looked at the sparkling pearl next to the ashes. The aura-concealing pearl is finally mine. Thinking of this, Yi Chen smiled slightly, and then his right hand grabbed the air. In the next second, the aura-concealing pearl flew directly to Yi Chen and then fell into Yi Chen's hand. Yi Chen glanced at the aura-concealing bead in his hand that was emitting a dazzling white light. With a thought, a drop of essence blood was forced out of his finger and dripped onto the aura-concealing bead. The moment the blood touched the aura-concealing pearl, a red light suddenly lit up. In the next second, the blood was completely absorbed by the aura-concealing pearl. At the same time, a faint connection appeared between Yi Chun and the aura concealing Pearl. Before Yi Chun could carefully sense it, the system's notification suddenly rang. Ding! Congratulations to player Yi Chun for obtaining the innate spiritual treasure, Aura Concealing Pearl. When the system's notification ended, Yi Chun nodded his head in satisfaction, and then his mind moved. In the next second, the Aura Concealing Pearl shook. A wong sound was heard. The Aura Concealing Pearl, which had just recognized its owner, suddenly released a layer of light that was so weak that it could not be seen, and then it wrapped Yi Chun tightly. At the same time, Yi Chun's aura disappeared without a trace. Feeling that his aura was completely hidden, Yi Chun laughed, and then released a monstrous killing intent and extremely tyrannical pressure without hesitation. At this moment, Yi Chun's clothes fluttered even though there was no wind. His long hair also fluttered. However, no matter how much killing intent and oppressive might Yi Chun unleashed, the outside of Yi Chun's body remained the same. There was no abnormality at all, not even a trace of Yi Chun's aura. After realizing this, Yi Chun could not help but laugh maniacally. The ability of the aura concealing pearl was indeed not to be underestimated. After ascending to the primordial world, it would be even more convenient for him to plunder heavenly treasures. Thinking of this, Yi Chun's mind moved, and the aura concealing bead instantly entered Yi Chun's Zifu and disappeared. When Yi Chun sensed the aura concealing pearl beside his violet palace primordial spirit, he could not help but raise his eyebrows. Then, he looked at the azure flood dragon's whip not far away. In the previous life, the players were helpless against the green Drake King's rod. However, a potion master deduced that the green Drake King's whip was the best antidote for the poison. Later on, the words of that potion master spread out. He didn't know if it was real or fake. If it was fake, thinking of this, Yi Chun could not help but sigh. Yi Chun could not be blamed for sighing. If the rumors of the rod's antidote were fake, then there would only be one outcome for the tens of thousands of female players in the Beauties Alliance: death. Yes, death. There was no other path to speak of besides death. Thinking about it, it was obvious that they would be in that state every day. Every time they reached their peak, they would spew out large amounts of primordialine. Moreover, it would last for a month. Of course, Yi Chun wanted to save the Beauties Alliance not because Yi Chun had any thoughts about them, or because Yi Chun was soft-hearted, but because they were poisoned because Yi Chun killed the Green Drake. Yi Chun wouldn't deny this point. It was precisely because of this that Yi Chun decided to take action and try to save the poisoned female players of Beauty's Alliance. Thinking of this, Yi Chun raised his left hand and grasped at the air. Crack! A sound was heard. A tree branch that was as thick as 3 thumbs and more than 3 meters long instantly broke off from a big tree and flew into Yi Chun's hand. Yi Chun did not even look at it. He waved his hand and stabbed the tree branch into the Green Drake King's Drake Whip. After a poochie sound, the 3-meter-long branch instantly pierced through the dragon whip. Seeing this, Yi Chun grasped with his right hand, and the tree branch pierced through the Drake Whip flew into Yi Chun's hand. Yi Chun glanced at the flood dragon whip tied to the tree branch. Then, with a thought, the space before him twisted. In the next second, Yi Chun stepped in and disappeared. West of the pool, 1,300 miles. The female players of the Beauties Alliance who were about to return to their territory but were infected by the rod's antidote were hugging each other naked and kissing back and forth. Just as the situation was getting out of control, the space suddenly distorted. In the next second, Yi Chun stepped out and appeared here. Looking at the lively Beauties Alliance players, Yi Chun sighed inwardly. He swung his right hand, and the Drake Whip flew out of the tree branch in Yi Chun's right hand. In the next second, Yi Chun's left hand pointed at the air. Countless water droplets appeared out of thin air and quickly flew toward the Drake Whip. After a few breaths, the Flood Dragon's Dragon Whip was wrapped in a huge water ball and suspended in the air. Seeing this, Yi Chun flicked his finger, and a flame instantly appeared and rushed toward the huge ball of water that was wrapped around the Drake Whip. The flame was not big, but it grew with the wind. By the time it reached the bottom of the huge ball of water, it had grown to the size of the ball of water and began to burn fiercely. After a few breaths, the huge water ball began to boil with a gurgling sound. At this moment, a few female players of the Beauties Alliance saw Yi Chun and rushed over with glowing eyes. No matter how you looked at it, it was as if they had seen the most delicious food. However, a few of the female players who were rushing over started to tremble violently when they were halfway there. Seeing this, Yi Chen's mouth twitched involuntarily. Damn, the rod's antidote was really domineering. Even if he didn't do anything between men and women, he could still completely release himself. Thinking of this, Yi Chen pointed at the air with his right hand, and the drake whip that was being boiled in the boiling water instantly shook and turned into powder that spread out as the boiling water continued to churn. After the time it took to drink a cup of tea, the female players of the Beauties Alliance who had just been released looked at Yi Chen again. Then, they all rushed toward Yi Chun like crazy. In the eyes of the female players of the Beauties Alliance, Yi Chun, who was standing not far away, was what they wanted the most. They wanted to give everything to Yi Chun. Even if Yi Chun whipped them, they would not back down. To the poisoned female players of the Beauties Alliance, Yi Chun was the only one in their lives. The reason was simple. Yi Chun was a man, and a man with a strong masculine aura. Yi Chun looked at the female players of the Beauties Alliance who were rushing over again and sighed inwardly. Then, he waved his right hand and imprisoned them in place. In the next second, Yi Chen's right hand slapped the boiling ball of water. Bang! A loud sound was heard. The boiling ball of water instantly exploded and turned into tens of thousands of smaller balls of water. At the same time, large amounts of water vapor rose from the tens of thousands of small balls of water. The small balls of water were rapidly cooling down. Yi Chen looked at the tens of thousands of small balls of water floating in the air and focused his mind. In the next second, the tens of thousands of small balls of water flew toward the female players of the Beauties Alliance who had lost their minds and burrowed into their mouths. In the blink of an eye, they were in their stomachs. After a few breaths, the female players of the Beauties Alliance all quieted down. Seeing this, Yi Chen let out a long sigh. Fortunately, the rumors were true. Just as Yi Chen thought of this, the leader of the Beauties Alliance, Li Mengyao, suddenly regained her consciousness and was stunned. In the next second, Li Mengyao couldn't help but let out a sharp scream. Ah! Chapter 597. Li Mingyao's shriek was very penetrating because she was a woman, and a woman who had never experienced a man before. For such a woman to suddenly encounter such a situation, it was impossible for her not to scream subconsciously. Of course, Li Mengyao had already guessed what Beauty Alliance was going through right before she lost consciousness after being poisoned. After all, not only did she see the abnormal state of her subordinates when the 10,000 miles poison cloud art erupted, she also personally experienced the palpitations that made her feel ashamed and afraid. Therefore, she knew that she had been poisoned and also knew what could happen after losing consciousness. Before she completely lost consciousness, Li Mengyao had thought of many things. There was fear and there was despair, but there was nothing she could do. Everyone in Beauty Alliance had been poisoned. Moreover, this wasn't a safe city, nor was it Beauty Alliance's territory. Being poisoned by this kind of poison, plus the fact that everyone in Beauty Alliance were women, there was no way they would have a good ending. No one would come to save them. Even if someone did, they would take advantage of the fact that they were poisoned to play with them wantonly. They might even capture them and raise them as slaves. If they encountered a demon, then everyone in Beauty Alliance would be in a miserable state. In the instant that she completely lost consciousness, Li Mengyao only had one thought in her mind. Beauty Alliance was finished. Whether they were eaten by demons or encountered by other men, Beauty Alliance was finished. She was unwilling to accept this and wanted to avoid this disaster, but it was useless. Her consciousness soon disappeared. Now that she had regained consciousness, she saw the scene that made her almost collapse. The entire Beauties Alliance, from top to bottom, without exception, had become naked women. Of course, that wasn't the most important thing. The most important thing was that Beauty Alliance wasn't the only one here. There was another man, and he was right in front of Li Mengyao, looking at her without any scruples. At that moment, Li Mingyao only had one thought in her mind. Beauty Alliance, from top to bottom, had been played by this man in front of her. Thinking of this, Li Mingyao's entire body almost collapsed. She had never experienced a man, nor had she been in a proper relationship. Although the current world was no different from the end of the world, and it was very difficult for love to appear, Li Mingyao still had a trace of fantasy in her heart. However, the inexplicable poisoning had completely shattered the fantasy in her heart. As Li Mingyao was on the verge of collapse, her vision gradually became clear. When she saw the man's face clearly, she was stunned. Yi Chen, after Li Mingyao recognized the man's identity, an inexplicable surprise suddenly appeared in her heart. It was very strong and very strong. At this moment, Li Mingyao's heart was filled with a feeling of being blessed, because she had become Yi Chen's woman. If there was a man in this world who could move Mingyao's heart the most, then the answer was simple. It was Yi Chen. That's right, the leader of Beauty Alliance. Li Mingyao thought so, because Yi Chen was so powerful that he was invincible. If she could become Yi Chen's woman, she would definitely be able to survive in this cruel world. Although this was very powerful, it was the truth. Li Mingyao wasn't the only one who thought so. All the women without men, and even those with men, thought so too. However, Li Mingyao, who had just been enveloped by luck, suddenly felt something, and then her face darkened. She didn't feel any pain. This wasn't the feeling she felt after being F***ed by Yi Chen. Just as Li Mingyao was feeling lost, the female players of Beauty Alliance woke up one after another, and then a series of shouts and screams followed. It was very lively. Yi Chen glanced at the female players of Beauty Alliance who had woken up, and then moved his mind. In the next second, the space in front of Yi Chen suddenly distorted. Li Mingyao, who was looking at Yi Chen, was stunned when she saw the distorted space in front of Yi Chen. She then hurriedly shouted at Yi Chen, "You Lord Beach, thank you." Hearing this, Yi Chen frowned slightly. He then looked at Li Mingyao, who was completely naked, and said, "Once the Safety City's protective barrier disappears, this world will become more and more dangerous. If you want to survive, not only do you need to work hard, but you also need to upgrade your territory to a city. That's right, it's best to buy a city wall blueprint. That kind of city wall has automatic defense arrow towers, which will be very helpful in defending the city." Li Mingyao was completely naked, and her body was completely exposed. She didn't seem to be on guard against Yi Chen. How could Yi Chen not know why she was doing this? Of course, Yi Chen didn't care about this, and he wouldn't have any negative thoughts because of this. After all, ever since the meteor fell in the real world, not only had the environment completely changed, but so had people's hearts. It could be said that the current real world followed the cruel law of the jungle. If you wanted to survive, you had to have strength, power, or rely on the strong. Li Mingyao's actions were the actions of relying on the strong. She wanted to become Yi Chen's woman. Yi Chen could see this, but Yi Chen couldn't accept it right now. It wasn't because Li Mingyao wasn't pretty, nor was it because Li Mingyao wasn't a virgin, but because of her identity. More accurately, Li Mingyao was the leader of the Beauties Alliance, and she was also a player. Yi Chen couldn't accept such an existence before he had absolute control over them. Of course, even if Yi Chen accepted her, it wouldn't be to satisfy his desires, but to recruit subordinates. The reason was very simple. The Great Wilderness was very dangerous, and because of the uniqueness of the players, they had 10 chances to die. This was something that Yi Chen's subordinates in the game didn't have. Of course, Yi Chen didn't have to recruit subordinates. After all, Yi Chen had a lot of subordinates in the game, and there would be more in the future. However, if Yi Chen had a 100% control over the life and death of his subordinates, he wouldn't just let them go and waste this ability. After all, 100% control over the life and death of others could guarantee that Yi Chen wouldn't be betrayed by his subordinates, and he wouldn't be stabbed in the back. Of course, Yi Chen still didn't have a 100% control over the life and death of others. Otherwise, Yi Chen would have a lot of subordinates already. Yi Chen was very sure of this. After all, the world was becoming more and more cruel. There were deaths every day, and once the protective shield of the safe cities disappeared, the situation would become even worse. If most people wanted to survive, they would either rely on the strong or a powerful force. Yi-chan was, without a doubt, the strongest existence in the human race. Whether it was strength or influence, Yi-chan was number one. If Yi-chan said that he wanted to recruit subordinates, even if he had to sign a slave contract, there would still be countless people willing to follow Yi-chan. Chapter 598. Li Mengyao was stunned by Yi Chen's words. She didn't think that Yi Chan would tell her the use of the city wall blueprint. She had seen the city wall blueprint in the market before, but the price was a bit high. In her opinion, instead of spending a lot of money on a useless blueprint, it would be better to spend it on equipment and cultivation techniques. After all, a territory built in the real world would also have city walls once it was upgraded to city level. Who would have thought that Yi Chan would tell her that the city wall blueprint had an automatic defense arrow tower? This was something she had never thought of and didn't know. After coming back to her senses, Li Mengyao was overjoyed and quickly bowed to Yi Chan. Thank you, Lord Beach. Yi Chan had always been cold, cruel, and unreasonable. Now that he suddenly told Li Mengyao about the secret of the city wall blueprint, how could Li Mengyao, who already had feelings for Yi Chan, not be happy? When Yi Chan heard Li Mengyao's inexplicable excitement, he nodded and said, "Okay, I still have things to do, goodbye." After Yi Chan finished speaking, he took a step into the distorted space and disappeared. When Li Mengyao saw Yi Chan leave so straightforwardly, her slightly excited mood was instantly dealt a blow. However, Li Mengyao immediately revealed a smile. At least, this was a good start, wasn't it? Just as Li Mengyao thought of this, Hu Xiao, little Loli, and the others, who had just woken up and were blushing due to embarrassment, came to Li Mengyao's side. Big sister Yao Yao, was that big brother Yi Chan? Little Loli looked at the place where Yi Chan disappeared and asked with a red face. After little Loli said this, Hu Xiaoya and the other core members of Beauty Alliance looked at Li Mengyao with shyness and hope, anxiously waiting for Li Mengyao's answer. Hearing this, Li Mengyao smiled and said, "It's him. So, we were all saved by him." Hu Xiaoya heaved a sigh of relief when she heard this. Li Mengyao nodded and said, "Yes, we were saved by him again. But we're already like this. Why? Why isn't he? Isn't he?" A model with an extremely slim figure said with a puzzled expression. However, halfway through her sentence, she stopped because she was too embarrassed to continue. Although she didn't finish her sentence, the women in Beauty's Alliance understood. They couldn't help but blush. Then, like the models, they looked confused. When Li Mengyao heard this, she glanced at her subordinates and then looked at the place where Yi Chan disappeared. He's different from the others. He's been different from the start. However, we still have a chance. Li Mengyao had a feeling that following Yi Chan was not necessarily hopeless. Of course, Li Mengyao didn't think so before. However, just now, Yi Chan told her the use of the city wall blueprint. In Li Mengyao's eyes, this was a signal that Yi Chan had started to accept their signal. Otherwise, why would Yi Chan save Beauty's Alliance time and time again, and even tell them the use of the city wall blueprint? Unfortunately, this was only the answer Li Mengyao thought. She didn't know what Yi Chan was thinking. Otherwise, she wouldn't be so excited. For Yi Chan, saving Beauty's Alliance from the pursuit of the Holy Cathedral's army of 50,000 was because of his promise in the game world. He cured Beauty's Alliance because the source of their poison was with Yi Chan. As for telling Li Mengyao the use of the city wall blueprint, it was because he had seen tens of thousands of naked women in vain. Moreover, he had seen them very carefully. To be more precise, this was a compensation. Otherwise, why would Yi Chan help and tell Beauty's Alliance the secret of the city wall blueprint? As soon as Li Mengyao's words fell, the female players of Beauty's Alliance were all stunned. Then their eyes lit up. The hidden meaning in Li Mengyao's words stimulated the female players of Beauty's Alliance. If it was before the meteor fall, they would all be sought after by men. There would never be a situation where several women would willingly follow a man. But now, they who were once the center of attention had become the weak. No one pitied them. No one could pity them. They had to face danger at any time. Fatal danger. Their lives could be at risk at any time. Even if someone helped them, it would be because of their faces and bodies. This was still putting it in a positive light. In reality, most people who wanted them did it for free. They wouldn't treat them as humans at all. After all, the world had changed. No one would do anything for them just because they were beautiful. Therefore, the women of Beauty's alliance, who had experienced many things, were already clear-headed. They all knew one thing. If they wanted to survive in this cruel world, they either had to be strong or rely on the strong. The former was difficult because they had already tried. The latter was the best choice without a doubt. Yichun. No matter what their thoughts were, the women of Beauty's alliance, from top to bottom, all saw Yichun as the best choice. Even if they all followed Yichun, no one would be jealous or angry because of this. As for the reason, it was simple. They didn't have a right. One had to know that Yichun's women were all super beautiful. Moreover, they were the natural kind. Compared to the women of Beauty's alliance, they were a level higher. More importantly, even if they weren't willing, there would be others willing. As long as Yichun opened his mouth, there would be countless beautiful women willing to come and let Yichun choose. When that time came, the women of Beauty's alliance would have no status. Of course, this was only what the female players of Beauty's alliance thought. Although this was the reality, Yichun hadn't thought about it. Yichun did like beautiful women with slim figures. However, Yichun wasn't the kind of person who would want to sleep with beautiful women. Even if Yichun took in women, he would take them as subordinates, not to expand his harem. The world was so big, and there were so many beautiful women. Yichun had no interest in spending time on ordinary women. Li Mengyao glanced at her excited subordinates and let out a long sigh. She then opened her mouth and said, "All right, hurry up and change. Let's go back to our territory. We need to level up our territory. The real world won't be safe soon." After receiving Yichun's hint, Li Mengyao had made up her mind. She would go back and buy the city wall blueprints and build it separately. As soon as Li Mengyao finished speaking, the female players of Beauty's alliance were all stunned. Then they took out their clothes from their interspatial slots and put them on. 3,400 miles south of Reincarnation City, on a mountain that was 10,000 meters tall, the space suddenly distorted. In the next second, Yichun stepped out and appeared here. Woo-woo, a gust of wind blew past, sweeping up Yichun's long hair and blowing it towards the pile of bones behind Yichun. Rustle, rustle. The sound of something crawling could be heard from the pile of bones. In the next second, a group of winged, pitch-black insects crawled out from the cracks in the pile of bones. Chapter 599. They had thorny carapaces and sharp mouths. Overall, they looked like owls. Anyone who saw them would be able to tell that they were just mutated insects. No matter how strange they were, they could be easily killed. If someone really had that thought, they would definitely suffer a huge loss. That was because they were life-devouring bugs, extremely dangerous ones. Life-devouring insects were social insects, and were born with extremely strong defensive carapaces. Whether it was power or magic of the same realm, they would be greatly weakened when facing their carapaces. Simply put, they were very difficult to kill when facing life forms of the same realm. Coupled with their huge population, they would often kill anyone who encountered them. There were very few exceptions. Of course, it would be fine if they were directly bitten to death, but they were most likely caught by the life-devouring insects and treated as parasites for their offspring. That kind of result was worse than death, because those who were treated as larvae by the life-devouring insects would all be controlled by their innate poison without exception. They would be unable to move or resist. After that, those who were treated as larvae would be injected with eggs. 3 days later, they would officially start to suffer the bites of the life-devouring insects, and they would have to endure it. Yes, they would have to endure it, because all the life forms treated as larvae simply couldn't move. And that wasn't the key point. The most important thing was that the life forms treated as larvae would not only feel the feeling of the larvae drilling into their bodies, but they could also see it with their own eyes. That kind of feeling was simply enough to make people collapse. This process would continue until the larvae drilled out of the body of the host. And at that time, the life forms treated as parasites would have just died, and they would have to helplessly watch their bodies being bitten to death. It was also because of this that the life-devouring insects were recognized as extremely dangerous insects. And now, a large number of life-devouring insects appeared behind Yichun. It was obvious that they wanted to attack Yichun. Rustle, rustle. The crawling sounds of the life-devouring insects became more and more frequent. In just a few breaths, several 100,000 life-devouring insects appeared behind Yichun, and that number was still rapidly increasing. Feeling the rapidly increasing number of life-devouring insects behind him, Yichun couldn't help raising his eyebrows. It was about time to lure it out. Thinking of this, Yichun's primordial spirit moved, and an extremely terrifying divine sense gushed out in an instant. Then, it covered the army of life-devouring insects behind him. Squeak, squeak, intense screams followed closely behind. It was Yichun who had forcefully controlled the life-devouring insects with his divine sense, causing them to resist. Yichun curled his lips in disdain when he heard the screams behind him. Since Yichun was reborn, he knew how powerful and dangerous the life-devouring bugs were. However, Yichun had reached the god-martial state. How could he worry about his own safety when facing a life-devouring bug that wasn't even at the mortal evolution state? What's the use of resisting? Thinking of this, Yichun's mind moved. In the next second, the army of life-devouring insects behind Yichun flew up under the control of Yichun's divine sense and rapidly charged toward the 126-meter tree in front of Yichun. When the army of life-devouring insects flew next to the tree, Yichun smiled and pointed in the air. Boom! A loud sound was heard. A sea of fire instantly appeared and enveloped the densely packed army of life-devouring insects. Squeak! Squeak! The sharp cries of the insects became intense in an instant. A few seconds later, a deafening frog croak suddenly sounded. Croak! Hearing this, Yichun smiled. I knew it. There would definitely be special players of the beast race here. After detoxifying the Beauty's Alliance, Yichun released his divine sense once. As for the purpose, it was to clean up the special players of the beast race. After all, these existences were fine if they were asleep. If they woke up, they would definitely enter the game world. At that time, if Yichun ascended to the Eldritch world, it would be fine. But if he didn't, it would definitely affect Yichun greatly. Yichun didn't want the reward of being the first to ascend to the Eldritch world to be snatched away by the beast race. Of course, Yichun didn't want the special players of the beast race to cause trouble for Yichun after they ascended. Therefore, Yichun made up his mind to clean up the beast race in the east. Of course, this decision was made after Yichun's realm advanced to the god-martial realm. To be precise, before Yichun advanced to the god-martial realm, he didn't make up his mind to clean up the special players of the beast race. After all, at that time, Yichun's divine sense could only cover a radius of 10,000 miles. It would take more than a day or two to find and kill the special players of the shifter race at that level. Yichun didn't have that much time to waste in the real world. After all, there were still many things waiting for Yichun to do in the game world. For example, marrying Du Qiao and Xiao Qiao, World War, the 9 cauldrons of the Guardian Nation, and so on. Now that Yichun had advanced to the god-martial realm, his divine sense could cover a radius of 200,000 miles. Under such circumstances, it wouldn't take much time to clean up the special players of the beast race in the east. Therefore, after detoxifying the Beauty's Alliance, Yichun directly started to clean up the special players of the beast race. And the 10,000-meter-tall mountain Yichun was now and was the lair of a special player of the beast race. Of course, Yichun's divine sense couldn't detect the special player of the beast race here, but Yichun's divine sense could detect the beast race's secret realm here, as well as a large swarm of life-devouring bugs. At first glance, the three didn't seem to be related, but in fact they weren't. The life-devouring bugs' racial habits determined that they couldn't build their nest on a mountain. But the fact was, they had built their nest here. There was only one explanation for such a situation. Someone was controlling these life-devouring bugs. Coupled with the fact that there was a beast race's secret realm at the top of the mountain, it wasn't hard to determine that the one controlling the life-devouring bugs was a special player of the beast race. If an ordinary shifter player encountered a swarm of life-devouring bugs, they would either be eaten or treated as larvae. Therefore, when Yi Chan saw the beast race's secret realm and the life-devouring bugs here, he directly came here. Because there was a special player of the beast race here, and a special player of the beast race with special abilities. Otherwise, the life-devouring bugs wouldn't be controlled. Of course, even if there wasn't a special player of the beast race here, Yi Chan would still come here, because if the life-devouring bugs grew up, they would be a great threat to Yi Chen's Samsara City. Yi Chen didn't want Samsara City to be attacked by the life-devouring bugs in the real world while he was in the game world. Just as Yi Chen thought of this, an extremely demonic red door of light suddenly appeared in the giant tree in front of him. In the next second, an enormous toad covered in lumps suddenly appeared on the mountaintop. Chapter 600. Croak. The angry croak of a frog was heard again as the giant toad appeared. At this moment, demonic chi overflowed, and a fishy wind filled the air. Along with it, dust and gravel filled the air. At this moment, the sound of objects falling to the ground could be heard. Clap, clap, clap. The life-devouring bugs that had been burned by Yi Chen's fire fell to the ground in droves. Soon there was a layer of them, and they piled up higher and higher. Clearly, Yi Chen's fire had burned the life-devouring bugs, which could be said to be unrivaled in the same realm. When a huge toad saw this, its two big toad eyes suddenly widened, and then it angrily roared, "You're too weak. Damn human, I want you dead." As soon as the giant toad finished speaking, a violent killing intent surged out. The giant toad was furious because the life-devouring bugs that it had carefully cultivated had been burned to death. The toad was unwilling to accept this result. The reason was simple. The life-devouring bugs contained the pure essence of flesh and blood. As long as it was eaten, it could easily increase one's Yao Qi. If there were enough of them, it would not be a problem to increase one's Yao Qi. As for the toad, it had specially cultivated its life-devouring bugs so that after it finished cultivating, it could control the life-devouring bugs to devour flesh and blood. Then it could allow the life-devouring bugs to continuously evolve and advance. Once the life-devouring bugs reached a certain level, the toad would eat them and gain an increase in cultivation level. All of this had been planned by this oversized and ugly toad. But there was an accident. Someone had come to harvest the life-devouring bugs. At first, the toad thought that some expert of the Yao clan had taken a fancy to the life-devouring bugs that it had specially cultivated and had come to harvest them. After all, the fact that eating life-devouring bugs could increase one's Yao Qi was not a big secret among the Yao clan members who had obtained special opportunities. If some expert of the Yao clan saw the life-devouring bugs here, he would not let them go. It was because of this that the toad immediately woke up from its slumber in the demon race's secret realm when it sensed the fear from the life-devouring bugs. It then left the demon race's secret realm, ready to teach its fellow tribesmen a lesson for daring to have designs on it. Who would have thought that the result was not what it had imagined at all? The one who attacked its food was not one of its kind at all, but a human who should only exist on the menu of the demons. This was something that the oversized toad could not accept. One had to know that the toad had always believed that those who dared to come and harvest the life-devouring bugs could only be experts of the same race. After all, the life-devouring insects had been trained by him to be no weaker than ordinary demonic beasts. If it wasn't for the fact that other Monster Clan experts had also obtained the opportunity of the Monster Clan, once they encountered the swarm of life-devouring bugs, there was only one word to describe their fate: death. But now, there was a change in its plan. To be precise, it watched as the life-devouring bugs it had painstakingly cultivated were burned to death. Moreover, it was burned to death by a human. As a result, the toad's plan had become nothing. How could not be angry? When Yi-chun heard the toad's furious words, he curled his lips in disdain. Then, with a wave of his right hand, the black and thick godslayer instantly appeared in Yi-chun's hand. At this moment, the toad's mouth suddenly opened and a long red tongue instantly shot out of its mouth, rapidly shooting towards Yi-chun. It was obvious that the toad wanted to use its long tongue to wrap around Yi-chun and swallow Yi-chun into its stomach. As for the fact that Yi-chun had a weapon, the toad did not care at all. From the toad's point of view, if Yi-chun could burn the swarm of life-devouring bugs to death, his strength was definitely not weak. But no matter how strong he was no match for the toad, even if Yi-chun had a weapon. This was because its long tongue had an extremely corrosive mucus. Any weapon that came into contact with its long tongue would be directly corroded. It was impossible to hurt it. Of course, this was not the most important thing. The most important thing was that even if its long tongue did not have an extremely corrosive mucus, it was not something that could be hurt by any weapon. The toad was very confident about this point. When Yi-chun saw the long tongue shooting towards him, he smiled coldly. Without hesitation, the godslayer in his right hand slashed violently at the toad's long tongue. With his slash, the toad's thick tongue was instantly sliced in half by the godslayer. In an instant, a large amount of scarlet blood sprayed out from the toad's long tongue and dyed the ground red. Woo! A gust of wind blew, and the smell of blood began to spread, drifting into the distance. The toad's two big toad eyes widened in an instant. Then, it revealed a look of disbelief. It had never imagined that the mucus it was so proud of and had an extremely corrosive effect would not be able to do anything to Yi-chun's godslayer. Even its long tongue, which was not afraid of ordinary weapons, would be crudely cut in half. The toad subconsciously looked at its long tongue that had been cut in half. When it confirmed that its long tongue had indeed been cut in half, its two large toad eyes suddenly shrank. How could this be? Just as the toad thought of this, an intense pain suddenly attacked it. Wave after wave, it strongly stimulated its nerves. In the next second, a mournful howl suddenly rang out. Awoo! The toad hurriedly retracted its long tongue that had been cut in half. At this moment, its large body involuntarily trembled from the pain. At the same time, the toad's mouth began to move around. It was obvious that it wanted to use this action to reduce the stimulation of the pain. Unfortunately, it was useless. The pain did not lessen even a little because of its actions. As it moved, a large amount of scarlet blood sprayed out from its toad mouth, splattering everywhere. Yi-chun glanced at the toad, curled his lip in disdain, and flew up. In the next second, Yi-chun flew above the enormous toad. At the same time, Yi-chun lifted the godslayer in his right hand. When the wailing toad saw this, its two eyes shrank. Without thinking, it summoned its demon energy. In the next second, a series of explosions rang out. Bang, bang, bang. The lumps on the enormous toad's body that were the size of water tanks suddenly exploded. Then, hundreds of balls of stinky black mucus sprayed toward Yi-chun. In the air, Yi-chun looked at the hundreds of balls of black mucus that were rapidly shooting toward him. He frowned slightly, and then pointed his left hand into the air. After a buzzing sound, a wall of water 500 meters in diameter, completely composed of water, instantly appeared and blocked in front of Yi-chun. At this moment, the hundreds of balls of black mucus rushed into the wall of water. Incomparably dense collision sounds rang out. Bang, bang, bang. The sound of the black mucus hitting the wall of water was abnormally dull. It was obvious that its impact was not small. However, even so, the black mucus was unable to pass through the wall of water and attack Yi-chun. When Yi-chun saw this, he could not help but raise his eyebrows. At this moment, a sizzling sound came from the blackened wall of water. In the next second, a large amount of black smoke suddenly rose from the wall of water and rushed toward Yi-chun. Chapter 601. Yi-chun frowned when he saw this. Damn, that toad's venom is actually a poison spell. Yi Chen couldn't be blamed for thinking that way. The toad had shot the poison out of the lumps on Yi Chen's back. No matter how one looked at it, it was just pure poison. But in reality, not only did the toad's venom corrode Yi Chen's water wall, but it also automatically produced poison gas to attack Yi Chen. This was already a very obvious spell attack. Facing a poison spell, if one didn't want to be hit, they would have to either dodge or use an even more tyrannical spell to counter the poison spell and consume its energy before breaking it. Otherwise, he might really fall for it. But this wasn't very applicable to the toad. As for the reason, it was very simple. The toad's poison spells were very special and had clear corrosive properties. If Yi Chen really released a spell to prevent the poison gas from approaching, it might fail. And if it failed, Yi Chen wouldn't be facing something as simple as being poisoned. Thinking of this, Yi Chen frowned once again before rapidly flying away. Yi Chen had already advanced to the divine martial realm, and his realm was clearly higher than the toad's. Moreover, he was very powerful, but Yi Chen wasn't arrogant. Thus, Yi Chen directly flew away to avoid the toad's poison gas instead of resisting it. Clearly knowing that there might be danger, yet he still insisted on doing it. For the reborn Yi Chen, this was something he would never do. Naturally, this was only if it involved Yi Chen himself. If it involved Yi Chen's women, even if it was dangerous, Yi Chen wouldn't hesitate to make a move. There was no doubt about that. Seeing Yi Chen directly fly away, the toad's two huge eyes were filled with disappointment. It was clear that the toad wanted to see Yi Chen resist its poison spells and not avoid them. Yi Chen, who was far away, kept his divine sense locked onto the toad. When he saw the disappointment in the toad's eyes, Yi Chen couldn't help but curl his lips. This King toad is indeed dishonest. At the thought of this, Yi Chen threw the Godslayer in his right hand into the air and pointed it with his sword fingers. In the next second, an ancient golden army character appeared beneath Yi Chen's feet. The word Bing was surrounded by golden light, forming a huge golden disk. Inside it, tiny golden runes were constantly swimming, and Yi Chen was standing in it. At the same time, the sound of the great path rang out. Yi Chen couldn't help but raise his eyebrows when he felt that the army formula was much smoother than before. I haven't used the army formula for a long time. I didn't expect it to improve so much. It should have improved when I used the Tao Comprehension Stone and entered the Tao Comprehension mode to refine the Fire Spirit bead. Thinking of this, Yi Chen smiled faintly, and then with a thought. In the next second, the thick black, god-slaying spear trembled. Buzz! The black and thick god-slaying spear was instantly enveloped by the golden light. Then, it continuously circled around Yi Chen. On the ground, the huge and extremely ugly toad's eyes suddenly shrank when it saw the abnormality in the sky. At that moment, the toad felt a strong sense of danger, the kind that could threaten its life. Sensing this, the toad couldn't help but look at Yi Chen and ask in a deep voice, "Who are you? Who are you? Why are you looking for trouble with me? Who I am is not important. What's important is that you bring me to the mystic realm behind you. Otherwise, you'll die," Yi Chen said disdainfully. Yi Chen could have killed the toad directly. After all, Yi Chen's connate spiritual treasure could not be burned. What's more, Yi Chen had the red karmic fire thunder. It was too easy to kill the toad directly. However, Yi Chen didn't do so. That was because Yi Chen knew that there was definitely something good in the demon race mystic realm. Although Yi Chen didn't know what good things there were in the demon race's secret territory, this didn't stop him from wanting to plunder it. However, Yi Chen was a human. If he wanted to enter the demon race mystic realm, he had to be led by a demon. Otherwise, Yi Chen would die of exhaustion before he could even think of entering the demon race mystic realm. This was the main reason why Yi Chen didn't kill the toad directly. Of course, this was also the main reason why Yi Chen had purposely used the life-devouring insects to lure the toad out of the fiend race's secret realm after discovering the toad's secret realm. The toad's pupils constricted when it heard Yi Chen's words. Then it shouted at Yi Chen, "Don't be so insolent. Human, don't push your luck. If you want to live, leave now. Otherwise, I will really kill you." The toad had never imagined that Yi Chun would ask it to bring him to the demon race mystic realm. That was its base. How could it bring Yi Chun in? When Yi Chun heard Toad's harsh words, he glanced at Toad with disdain and said, "What are you talking about? You only have 3 chances." As soon as Yi Chun finished speaking, the god-slaying spear that was shining with golden light turned around and aimed at the toad. When the toad on the ground saw the god-killing spear aimed at it, it suddenly shivered. Just now, its long tongue had been easily cut into 2 by the god-slaying spear, and this was under the condition that the god-slaying spear did not add any attributes. And now, the god-slayer was shining with golden light. It was clear that it had some attributes added to it. If it was hit by the god-slayer, it would most likely be seriously injured. Thinking of this, the toad glared at Yi Chun before unhesitantly jumping towards the red door behind it. The toad didn't want to fight against Yi Chun. It only wanted to save its life. As for revenge, it would have to wait. It couldn't be helped. Yi Chun was too abnormal. With a wave of his hand, he could release a spell that covered a radius of 500 meters. Even the strongest of the lesser demons couldn't do such a thing. He was using his higher realm to bully the toad. Moreover, Yi Chun, this abnormal human, actually had a spear of unknown grade. Not only could it ignore its mucus, but it could also easily break through its physical defense. It didn't have fur or scales, but its physical defense wasn't bad. It vaguely remembered that a monkey once came here with what seemed to be a human Earth-level weapon, wanting to snatch its opportunity. It was stabbed twice by the Earth-level weapon, but it was completely fine. Then, it easily swallowed the monkey and the Earth-level weapon. Therefore, even though it didn't have fur or scales, it was still very strong. However, such a strong physical body was like paper in front of an abnormal human like Yi Chun. It didn't want to cause trouble for Yi Chun anymore. It couldn't fight. If it continued, it would only be abused. If it wasn't careful, it would lose its life. The toad's thoughts raced. However, just as it thought that it would immediately return to the demon race's mystic realm and be safe, the god-slaying spear in the sky suddenly transformed into a beam of golden light and flashed down. Uft! The black and thick god-slaying spear instantly pierced into the toad's back and nailed it to the ground. In the next second, a shrill cry rang out. Up! Chapter 602. BZZT, BZC, BZC. A large amount of blood spurted out from the toad's mouth and dripped onto the ground. At this moment, the toad's mouth was wide open. Its swollen and ugly body started to tremble violently because of the pain and fear. The toad guessed that the Godslayer was not to be trifled with, so it wanted to return to the Fiend clan's secret realm as soon as possible. However, the god-slaying spear was too fast. In the blink of an eye, it had pierced a bloody hole with a diameter of 3 meters in its back. Then it pierced through its stomach and pinned it to its belly. The toad thought of many things in that instant. There was regret, anger, fear, but most of all there was regret. Yes, the toad regretted its actions. It regretted leaving the Fiend race's secret realm after hearing the cries of the life-devouring insects. It regretted even more for looking down on Yi Chun after leaving the Fiend race's secret realm. Even after its tongue was cut off by Yi Chun, it still didn't understand the situation and still tried to attack Yi Chun. Of course, what the toad regretted the most was that it did not return to the Fiend clan's secret realm immediately after releasing the poison spell on Yi Chun. If it had returned to the Fiend clan's secret realm in time, while Yi Chun was resisting the poison spell, it might not have been seriously injured, and it could have survived unscathed. The toad regretted it very much, but it was too late for regrets now. Because the Godslayer had pierced a huge hole in its body, the toad's blood was gushing out like crazy. The large amount of blood that was spurting out was quickly taking away its life force. In the blink of an eye, it felt weak. Go back. It had to go back. Otherwise, it would die. When the toad thought of this, it leaped into the air without hesitation. In the next second, there was a poochie sound. The toad had actually forcefully broken free from the Godslayer that had nailed it to the ground. In that instant, A large amount of blood, mixed with the internal organs that had been crushed by the Godslayer, flowed out from the toad's belly. In the sky, Yichen couldn't help but raise his eyebrows when he saw this. Then, he slanted his sword. A buzzing sound was heard. The Godslayer instantly left the ground and changed directions in the blink of an eye. Then, it pierced towards the toad again. The golden light flashed, and in the blink of an eye, the sound of flesh being pierced rang out again. Poochie! A sound was heard. Toad, who had just escaped from the Godslayer, was stabbed by the Godslayer again. This time, the Godslayer pierced the toad's heart. Just as the toad's heart was pierced by the god-killing spear, the toad's two large toad eyes instantly widened. It was as though they could pop out at any moment. Bang! A loud sound was heard. The toad landed heavily on the ground. In the next second, an extremely mournful howl rang out. Oh, the toad's miserable howl was very strange because it was mixed with crying and fear. When Yichen heard Toad's strange howl, he couldn't help but stare blankly. Then, he looked at Toad, who was constantly twitching because of the pain. In the next second, Yichen curled his lips in disdain. F***, this toad is a small monster, but it's actually crying. Just as Yichen thought, Toad, who had been attacked by the Godslayer for the second time, couldn't stop its tears from flowing out after it landed on the ground. No matter how he looked at it, it looked like a mischievous child who had been bullied very badly. Thinking of this, Yichen looked directly at Toad and said, "You have one last chance." As soon as Yichen finished speaking, the toad, which was still wailing miserably, instantly stopped making any noise. Because of Yichen's threat, and also because of the devouring power from the Godslayer, which had pierced its heart. At this moment, Toad was inexplicably horrified to discover that the Godslayer, which had cut through it like vegetables, was actually going to devour its soul. If death was terrifying, then the death of one's soul was even more terrifying. How could Toad, who had obtained the inheritance of the monster race, not know this? It was also because of this that Toad was so frightened when it realized that its soul was being devoured that it even forgot to howl. At the thought of its soul being devoured by the Godslayer, it would completely die and be unable to reincarnate. Toad suddenly shivered, then hurriedly looked at Yichen and screamed, I agree. Hurry up and take that spear away." At this moment, Toad was terrified. It was afraid of death, but it was even more afraid of its soul being annihilated. What escape? What counterattack? What revenge? At this moment, the toad no longer cared about anything. Right now, it only wanted to protect its soul. As long as its soul wasn't destroyed, even if it really died, it could be reincarnated. And with its cultivation as a small monster, it still had a chance to recover its memories after reincarnating. It was also because of this consideration that Toad completely gave up on resisting. Hearing this, Yichen glanced at Toad and said disdainfully, "Give me the authority to enter the mystic realm." The mystic realm of the monster race was exclusive to the monster race. If a human wanted to enter, they had to be at least a sky immortal. Only then could they break through the door and charge into the mystic realm of the monster race. If they didn't have such strength, they would have to get permission from the monster race to enter. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to enter the mystic realm of the monster race, even if they died of exhaustion. Hearing this, Toad didn't hesitate and looked at the red door of light right in front of it. In the next second, the red door of light suddenly emitted a mysterious wave of energy that swept across Yichen's body. Seeing this, Yichen's primordial spirit moved, and his consciousness rushed towards the red door of light. When Yichen's divine sense entered the red door of light unimpeded and arrived at the demon race's secret realm, Yichen smiled. Then he looked at the enormous toad and said, "What are you waiting for? At least you're honest. I'll give you a quick death." As soon as Yichen's words fell, Toad's pupils constricted. It thought that after agreeing to Yichen's request, Yichen would kill it directly. Although it was unwilling, it had no choice. Because its soul was being devoured by the Godslayer, it didn't want its soul to be annihilated and completely die. But now what was worried about had happened. Yichen really wanted to kill it. At this moment, Toad was terrified because it didn't want to die. But when it thought of its shattered heart, Toad calmed down. In the next second, Toad looked at Yi Chun and said, "I've done what you asked. It's time to take that spear away." Hearing this, Yi Chun couldn't help but raise his eyebrows and say, "You can die now." Yi Chun didn't promise Toad to take away the Godslayer. Naturally, he wouldn't be soft-hearted because of Toad's weakness and misery. To Yi Chun, the demon clan was his mortal enemy. There was no exception. Therefore, Yi Chun wouldn't be soft-hearted because Toad was beaten up badly, nor would he let Toad go because he wanted something from the demon clan's mystic realm. In fact, this had always been Yi Chun's code of conduct. It was cold and cruel. After Yi Chun finished speaking, he pointed at Toad with his left hand. In the next second, there was an earth-shattering sound of thunder. Kaboom! At the same time, a 10-meter-thick lightning bolt suddenly descended and struck the Toad's head. Boom! There was a loud sound. Toad's head was instantly blasted apart by the ferocious lightning bolt. At this moment, red and white flew out and gradually covered the ground. BZZT, BZZT. Thousands of tiny lightning bolts constantly flowed around Toad's body, wantonly roasting it. At the same time, the Godslayer in Toad's body flashed black and then swallowed Toad's soul. Chapter 603. Looking at the dead Toad that was still emitting the fragrance of meat, Yi Chun waved his right hand. The Godslayer shook and flew to Yi Chun's side. At this moment, the system notification sounded. Ding! Congratulations to player Yi Chun for being the third player to kill a special shifter. Due to his special status, he is rewarded with innate attribute points x 300. When the system notification ended, Yi Chun couldn't help but smirk. As expected, the reward for killing a special shifter had completely turned into innate attribute points. Not bad. Not bad. The more innate attribute points, the better. But then again, if it wasn't for the treasure hunting fish that went to steal the golden bird's egg, he might have missed this opportunity. When he had the chance, he would definitely give that little guy some benefits. Thinking of this, Yi Chun couldn't help but smile and look at the Godslayer. When Yi Chun saw that there wasn't a trace of blood on the Godslayer's gun, he nodded in satisfaction and grabbed the Godslayer. This opportunity was hard to come by, so he couldn't waste it. Moreover, he couldn't let any unstable factors remain. The unstable factors that Yi Chun was thinking of were naturally the shifter players who had obtained special opportunities. If they weren't disturbed, they would remain in a deep slumber. When they woke up, they would become powerful shifter players. If that was the case, it wouldn't affect Yi Chun. But if they woke up halfway, they might enter the game world and become eldritch before Yi Chun. This wasn't something that Yi Chun wanted to see. Therefore, Yi Chun had made up his mind to clear out all the Yao clan players who had obtained special opportunities within the energy-shaping realm. This way, Yi Chun could benefit from it and avoid any possible trouble. Thinking of this, Yi Chun looked at the red door and flew over. Since Yi Chun could enter the Toad's shifter's secret territory, he naturally couldn't leave it alone. After a breath's time, Yi Chun passed through the red door and arrived at the Toad's shifter's secret territory. When the dizziness from the teleportation disappeared, Yi Chun opened his eyes and looked directly at the spirit spring in the center of the secret territory. In the next second, Yi Chun's eyes widened. It was a spirit spring with a spirit vein sealed. Previously, when Yi Chun's consciousness had entered the fiend race's mystic realm, he had taken a cursory look. Although he had only seen a spirit spring, Yi Chun did not believe that it was that simple. Although the spirit spring could provide a large amount of spirit chi, it wasn't enough for a beast to become a shifter in a short amount of time. Even the highest grade spirit spring, the spirit spring, couldn't let a beast to become a beast. The reason was simple. There was a limit to the amount of spirit chi that the spirit spring could produce every day. However, this limit was far from enough to satisfy the demon race's need for rapid advancement. Take the Toad, for example. Even if it absorbed all the spirit chi produced by the spirit spring every day, it would take at least 100 years to become a small shifter. But now, It hadn't even been half a year since the meteor fell, and the toad had become a small shifter. It was obvious that the spirit spring in the shifter's secret territory couldn't be a simple spirit spring. The result was just as Yi-Chen thought. The spirit spring in the shifter's secret territory wasn't a simple spirit spring. It was a spirit spring with a high-grade spirit vein sealed within. What was a spirit vein? It was a place where spirit qi gathered. It could produce an extremely large amount of spirit qi every day. If it was calculated in terms of spirit qi, a high-grade spirit vein could provide 100 times more spirit qi than a middle-grade spirit vein, and a middle-grade spirit vein was 100 times more spirit qi than a low-grade spirit vein. As for a low-grade spirit vein, it could provide 1,000 times more spirit qi than a spirit spring. If it was calculated in terms of the number of people who could cultivate, a low-grade spirit vein could guarantee that 10 people could cultivate to the Purple Mansion realm at the same time. A middle-grade spirit vein could guarantee that 10 people could cultivate to the Nirvana realm at the same time. A high-grade spirit vein could guarantee that 10 people could cultivate to the Tribulation Transcendence realm at the same time. If it was the shifter race, this number would be the same. In other words, a high-grade spirit vein could guarantee that 10 shifter race members could cultivate to the Great Circle of the Great Circle at the same time. The spirit spring in the shifter's secret territory was a spirit spring with a high-grade spirit vein sealed within. Even a pig could sleep here until it reached the Great Circle of the Great Circle at an extremely fast speed. Damn it. Could it be that every shifter race player who obtained a special opportunity had a secret territory like this? He didn't know if that was the case, but even if it wasn't, it couldn't be that far off. At that thought, Yi-Chen's eyes lit up. He moved his feet and arrived beside the spirit spring. Yi-Chen couldn't help but raise his eyebrows when he saw the spirit spring with a high-grade spirit vein sealed within. Fortunately, he had refined the space origin. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to take away this spirit spring with a high-grade spirit vein sealed within. Thinking of this, Yi-Chen waved his left hand in the air. The next second, an extremely mysterious aura suddenly burst out. 4 vertical cracks suddenly appeared in the space 10 meters around the spirit spring that had been lying quietly in the secret territory, and then they directly cut down. It was soundless and extremely strange. In fact, this was the manifestation of Yi-Chen's space ability, space cutting. Of course, this was not important. What was important was that Yi-Chen wanted to take away the spirit spring with a high-grade spirit vein sealed within. As for his purpose, of course, he wanted to place this spirit spring with a high-grade spirit vein sealed within the Samsara city in the real world. With this, not only could Yi-Chen benefit, but also Yi-Chen's women and Yi-Chen's subordinates could benefit greatly. To be precise, this spirit spring with a high-grade spirit vein sealed within could greatly improve the speed of cultivation. Of course, this was not the only benefit. Besides this, the spiritual herb garden that Yi-Chen planned to cultivate could also benefit from it. After all, with this spirit spring with a high-grade spirit vein sealed within, the density of the spiritual qi of heaven and earth in Samsara city would definitely soar rapidly. And the denser the spiritual qi of heaven and earth, the more helpful it was for the growth of the spiritual herbs. It could be said that this spirit spring with a high-grade spirit vein sealed within was a great treasure for Yi-Chen at this moment. Moreover, it was what Yi-Chen needed most at this moment. It should be known that Yi-Chen was going to ascend to immortality. If the strength of Yi-Chen's subordinates was too weak, they would definitely be limited when they arrived in untainted land. There was no doubt about this. However, with a high-grade spirit vein that could rapidly improve the strength of his subordinates, the result would be different. Even if a high-grade spirit vein could not help all of Yi-Chen's subordinates to reach the Purple Mansion realm or the Nirvana realm, it could speed up the improvement of the strength of Yi-Chen's subordinates. This was not a problem at all. Time passed little by little. When the space around the spirit spring with a high-grade spirit vein sealed within was completely cut off, Yi-Chen used his mind to create another space crack 10 meters below the spirit spring, and then it expanded rapidly. After a few breaths, Yi-Chen opened his eyes abruptly and then sucked in the void. The spirit spring with a high-grade spirit vein sealed within instantly rose into the air and then flew towards Yichun. When the spirit spring arrived in front of Yichun, the space in front of Yichun was suddenly distorted. The next second, the spirit spring with a high-grade spirit vein sealed within disappeared instantly. Chapter 604. Seeing this, Yichun raised his eyebrows. Then, he used his primordial spirit and used his divine sense to explore the storage space. When Yichun saw the supreme grade spirit spring sealed with the upper grade spirit meridian in the storage space, he heaved a sigh of relief. The supreme grade spirit spring sealed with the upper grade spirit meridian contained an enormous amount of energy. Yichun had no experience in collecting such things. It was for this reason that Yichun was not sure if he could successfully collect the supreme grade spirit spring. Now that Yichun had successfully collected the supreme grade spirit spring sealed with the upper grade spirit meridian in the storage space, Yichun was naturally relieved. Fortunately, there were no accidents. Thinking of this, Yichun used his divine sense. In the next second, Yichun's divine sense covered the entire 1 square kilometer demon race secret realm. At the same time, everything in the demon race secret realm occupied by the toad was sensed by Yichun's divine sense. Desolate, dark, and lifeless. These were the feelings that the demon race secret realm gave Yichun at this moment. After confirming that there was nothing good in the demon race secret realm in front of him, Yichun raised his eyebrows and flew directly toward the red light gate. There were still many demon race players in the east who had special opportunities. Yichun did not want to waste time. After a few breaths, Yichun passed through the red light gate and returned to the outside world. Glancing at the entrance to the demon race secret realm that was still open, Yichun used his divine sense to distort the space in front of him. In the next second, Yichun stepped in and disappeared. In the real world, Samsara City, City Lord's Mansion Hall. Sister, why isn't Master back yet? Xiaoyu, who had transformed into a 5-year-old Lolita, looked away from the door and asked the flaming tiger Yulin worriedly. When the flaming tiger Yulin heard this, she could not help but glare at Xiaoyu and say, I already told you. I told you, Big Brother is invincible in this world. Don't curse Big Brother. I'm not cursing you, Master. I'm just worried. The treasure-hunting fish's little face became aggrieved. When the flaming tiger Yulin saw this, she couldn't help but rub the treasure-hunting fish's head. I know, All right, don't worry. Big Brother will definitely be fine. We have to believe in one thing. Big Brother is omnipotent. Clearly, flaming tiger Yulin wasn't really not worried about Yichun's safety. She just didn't want to say it out loud. The treasure-hunting fish nodded its little head and replied. As soon as the treasure-hunting fish finished speaking, the space in the main hall of the City Lord's mansion suddenly distorted. When the flaming tiger Yulin and the treasure-hunting fish Xiaoyu saw this, they were both stunned. At this moment, Yichun took a step forward and appeared in front of them. When they saw Yichun, the flaming tiger Yulin, and the treasure-hunting fish Xiaoyu were once again stunned. Then, they called out in unison, Big Brother, Master. Their voices were filled with surprise, because Yichun had returned safely. When Yichun heard this, he smiled and nodded. Then, he looked at the flaming tiger Yulin and said, Follow me. Follow me. Yichun had to quickly clear out the shifter players who had obtained special opportunities. It was very likely that he would encounter another shifter player with a shifter secret realm. If those shifter players were like toads and submitted to Yichun, then Yichun would be able to save himself a lot of trouble. However, if they did not submit or even come out of the shifter secret realm, then the flaming tiger Yulin's usefulness would be revealed. After all, the flaming tiger Yulin's original form was a flaming tiger. Although it was an immortal beast, it was still considered a shifter. After all, the shifter was a general term and not a specific term. Therefore, the flaming tiger Yulin could enter the shifter secret realm. This way, if Yichun encountered the shifter's secret realm again, he could deal with it simply and violently. To be more precise, Yichun could directly kill the shifter players in the shifter secret realm and let the flaming tiger Yi Lin take over the shifter's secret realm. This way, Yi Chan could also enter the shifter's secret realm and plunder the good stuff inside. If the special shifter players were different from the toads and did not have anything that could awaken them from their slumber, then the flaming tiger Yi Lin could directly enter the secret realm and lure the special shifter players out. Then, Yi Chen would act and kill the special shifter players. After getting the rewards, he would then go and plunder the shifter's secret realm. This was the main reason why Yi Chan returned to Samsara City and left with the flaming tiger Yi Lin. Okay, big brother. Hearing this, Yin Hu and Yi Lin were slightly startled, then hurriedly nodded their heads and replied. The flaming tiger Yi Lin was Yi Chen's spirit pet. She was loyal to Yi Chan. No matter what Yi Chan told her to do, she would obey 100%. Naturally, she wouldn't question him. Master, I'm at the mortal evolution state now. I can help you do a lot of things, the treasure hunting fish called out to Yi Chen. Yi Chen was taken aback. He then looked at the treasure hunting fish who had transformed into a 5-year-old lowly and said, there will be more opportunities in the future. There will be plenty of opportunities to do things in the future. What you need to do now is to cultivate. Cultivate diligently. Right from now on, you can also call me Big Brother. You don't need to call me Master. When there's a chance, I will raise your rank. Also, your name will be Yi Xiaoyu from now on. The treasure hunting fish stole the golden bird's egg and caused a series of changes. This also allowed Yi Chen to obtain fortuitous encounters that didn't exist in his previous life. It could be said that the treasure hunting fish had brought Yi Chen a lot of benefits. Of course, Yi Chen wouldn't be stingy with his praise and promises. Of course, Yi Chen's promise was not a false promise. Instead, it was something that had to be fulfilled. Hearing this, the treasure hunting fish's eyes lit up. Then it shouted excitedly, Big Brother! Thank you, Big Brother. I will definitely work hard in my cultivation. In fact, the treasure hunting fish Yi Xiaoyu had long wanted to ask Yi Chan if he could give her a name and if she could call him Big Brother. After all, the flaming tiger Yi Lin had a name and even called Yi Chen Big Brother. Ever since Yi Xiaoyu transformed into a little lowly, she had been very envious. It was because of this small wish in her heart that she took the risk to go to the golden bird's nest and steal its egg. And now, her wish had come true, and she had even received Yi Chen's praise. How could the treasure-hunting fish Yi Xiaoyu not be excited? Yi Chen looked at the excited treasure-hunting fish and suddenly felt like he had committed a crime. He couldn't help it. The treasure-hunting fish's age of transformation was too young. It was only 5 years old. Xiaoyu was a spirit beast. She couldn't be treated like a human. However, this little fella's temperament was indeed young. Thinking of this, Yi Chan sighed inwardly and said, Cultivate in Samsara City. You should cultivate well in Samsara City. Also, don't provoke those who are at a higher level than you. Yi Chan wanted the treasure-hunting fish to search for spiritual herbs, but Yi Chen didn't want her to die because of this. Hearing this, Yi Xiaoyu's heart couldn't help but warm up. Her small face suddenly broke into an extremely happy smile. At this moment, the treasure-hunting fish suddenly thought of something. After a slight pause, it hurriedly looked at Yi Chen and said, Big Brother, there's a tea tree in the bird's nest. It's almost ripe. We have to dig it up quickly. Chapter 605. When Yi Chen heard Yi Xiaoyu's words, he couldn't help but be stunned. Tea tree. Could it be enlightenment tea? Thinking of this, Yi Chen's eyes lit up. Damn, if it was really the enlightenment tea, he would be rich. The enlightenment tea was a very famous spiritual plant in Yi Chen's previous life. Its function was similar to the enlightenment stone, allowing one to have an epiphany. However, the enlightenment tea had 2 other functions that the enlightenment stone did not have. The first was to extend one's lifespan. That's right, it was to extend one's lifespan. Every leaf of the enlightenment tea could increase one's lifespan by 10 years. Although the enlightenment tea could not increase one's lifespan infinitely, it could increase it by 1,000 years. Yi Chen was in the God martial arts realm, and had a lifespan of 3,000 years. He did not have to worry about not having enough lifespan. However, Yichen was still very happy that it could increase one's lifespan by 1,000 years. This was understandable. After all, everyone wanted to have an unlimited lifespan. Even Yi Chun was no exception. Of course, this was not the main point. The main point was the second function of the Enlightenment Tea, which was to replace death. To be precise, every leaf of the Enlightenment Tea could allow all players to have one more chance of dying after entering the Eldritch World. To all the players, this was undoubtedly a huge blow. After ascending to the Eldritch World, whether it was a human player, a demon player, or a witch player, they could only die 10 times. After 10 times, they would be completely dead. If there was a treasure that could increase the maximum number of deaths, who would not want it? Who would not want to monopolize it? In Yi Chen's previous life, because of these two special functions of the Enlightenment Tea, it caused an earth-shattering battle. At that time, the secret of the Enlightenment Tea was discovered by the players. Countless human, demon, and witch players swarmed over. Then a great battle broke out. The sky darkened, and the sun and moon lost their light. In Yi Chen's previous life, he naturally wanted to participate. However, he gave up in the end. This was because there were too many humans, demons, and sorcerer tribes participating in the fight. Moreover, they were all very powerful. They were not people that Yi Chen could fight against in his previous life. After all, at that time, Yi Chen was living a miserable life. He was just cannon fodder. It was fine if he didn't appear, but once he did, he wouldn't last more than a minute. Of course, this was not important. What was important was that Yi Chen knew about the Tao Comprehension Tea and knew what its two special functions were. And now, Yi Chen heard the word tea tree from the mouth of the little lowly Yi Xiaoyu. If someone else had said that, Yi Chen wouldn't have taken it to heart. However, since it was the treasure-hunting fish, things were different. One had to know that the treasure-hunting fish's innate ability was to find treasures. Whether it was natural treasures or spiritual herbs, the treasure-hunting fish could identify them. In his previous life, the secret of the Tao Comprehension Tea was discovered by people because a monkey died no less than 20 times. Then, someone with ulterior motives found out and captured the monkey. Then, the monkey was forced to reveal the secret of the Tao Comprehension Tea later. Before the monkey died, it forcefully entered the game world and revealed the secret of the Tao Comprehension Tea on the Eldritch World channel. After that, there was a shocking battle, and the Tao Comprehension Tea tree was destroyed. In his previous life, he could only watch. In this life, the Tao Comprehension Tea tree was his. No one could take it away, let alone destroy it. Thinking of this, Yi Chen's eyes suddenly widened. Then he looked at the treasure-hunting fish, Yi Xiaoyu, who had transformed into a 5-year-old lowly. He asked Yi Xiaoyu, "Does that tea tree only have 999 tea leaves?" "Yes, big brother. That tea tree has a total of 999 tea leaves. Although I don't have any memories of it in my inheritance, I can confirm that the tea tree is definitely a treasure." The little lowly, Yi Xiaoyu, was slightly stunned when she heard this. Then, she hurriedly nodded and replied. After hearing Yi Xiaoyu's words, Yi Chen nodded and then asked, "Where's the nest of that stupid bird?" "It's on a mountain 8,600 kilometers southwest of Samsara City." "Big brother, you have to hurry." Previously, when the big bird was around, no one dared to go there. Now that the big bird is dead, its remaining aura won't last for long. After hearing Yi Chen's question, the treasure-hunting fish hurriedly said. When Yi Chen heard this, he nodded. Then, he used his soul consciousness to lock onto the mountain that Yi Xiaoyu had mentioned. It was located 8,600 miles southwest of Samsara City. When Yi Chen saw a huge tea tree with a diameter of more than 10 meters and a height of 100 meters growing on a mountain, his eyes widened. Holy shit, it's definitely the Tao Comprehension Tea Tree. Although the Tao Comprehension Tea Tree in Yi Chen's previous life was destroyed in the Great Battle, the appearance of the Tao Comprehension Tea Tree was still passed down. How could Yi Chen, who had been reborn, not know this? Looking at the Tao Comprehension Tea Tree's unique Tai Chi tree crown, Yi Chun was in a good mood. It was no wonder that Yi Chun was so excited. After all, it was the Tao Comprehension Tea Tree. As long as he obtained it, he would be able to obtain an endless supply of Tao Comprehension Tea. In this way, not only could Yi Chun increase his lifespan by 1,000 years, but he could also obtain a sufficient number of deaths. Although Yi Chun would not deliberately seek death and was not willing to die, to be able to increase the number of deaths was undoubtedly a good thing for Yi Chun. After all, the Eldritch world was too dangerous. Not only were there natives of the Eldritch world, but even experts from other worlds would also ascend there. It could be said that in the future, the Eldritch world would be a huge furnace of flesh and blood. Death will be the main melody there. Therefore, Yi Chun did not mind increasing the number of deaths by a few hundred or even a few thousand. Of course, this was just to be prepared, and this was not the main reason why Yi Chun was determined to obtain the Tao Comprehension Tea. If he had to say who it was for, it would be for Chanwan, Kai Mer, Mi Jun, Zhao Yu, Huangwan and the others. Of course, there were also Yi Chun's subordinates. As for the reason, it was very simple. They were all from the Three Kingdoms beginners area and were not players. After they died, they would really die and could not be resurrected. If they used the Tao Comprehension Tea, they would also have a chance to be resurrected. Every piece of Tao Comprehension Tea could guarantee that they would be resurrected once. And this was the fundamental reason why Yi Chun was determined to obtain the Tao Comprehension Tea. Thinking of this, Yi Chun's mind moved. In the next second, the space in front of Yi Chun suddenly distorted. After glancing at the distorted space, Yi Chun stepped into it without hesitation and disappeared. 8,600 miles southwest of Samsara City, on the top of a majestic mountain, a monkey with golden fur suddenly jumped to the top of the mountain and then ran straight to the Tao Comprehension Tea Tree. At this moment, the space beside the Tao Comprehension Tea Tree suddenly distorted. In the next second, Yi Chun stepped out and appeared here. Chapter 606. The golden-haired monkey, who was running towards the Tao Comprehension Tea Tree, was stunned when it saw Yi Chun suddenly appear. Then, it hurriedly stopped in its tracks. At that moment, the expression on the golden-haired monkey's face was very interesting. Some were shocked, some were angry, but of course, most of them were frightened. That's right, fear. The golden-haired monkey saw the entire process of Yi Chun appearing here and recognized Yi Chun's identity. If it were someone else, the golden-haired monkey wouldn't be so worried and afraid. However, the person who came here was none other than the number one person of the human race, Yi Chun. The moment the golden-haired monkey saw Yi Chun, it even recalled how it was slapped to death by Yi Chun not long ago in the game world. At the thought of this, the golden-haired monkey suddenly shuddered. It couldn't be helped. Yi Chun was too ferocious and too perverted. More importantly, this was the real world. If it was killed by Yi Chun in the real world, it would be the same as being stabbed to death by Yi Chun in the game world with the Godslayer. The result would be the same. It would be a complete death. And this was the fundamental reason why the golden-haired monkey was shocked and even terrified when it saw Yi Chun. To escape or not to escape, the golden-haired monkey tried its best to stabilize its suddenly beating heart and then thought anxiously. The golden-haired monkey wanted to escape because its strength was completely inferior to Yi Chun's. It didn't want to escape because it was worried that Yi Chun would directly attack and kill it. Back in the game world, Yi Chun had killed hundreds of thousands of monsters with a single slap. Now that the golden-furred monkey had died, its cultivation had dropped, and it had become a ferocious beast. How could it possibly escape from Yi Chun? It even suspected that if it dared to escape, Yi Chun would slap it in the next second. Just as the golden-haired monkey was thinking rapidly, Yi Chun glanced at the Tao Comprehension Tea Tree close by and smiled slightly. Then, he looked at the frightened, golden-haired monkey. In his previous life, the one who obtained the Tao Comprehension Tea wasn't the giant golden bird that was killed, but a monkey. Could it be that the monkey was the one here? Thinking of this, Yi-Chen couldn't help but size up the golden-haired monkey. Then, he took a step forward. In the next second, Yi-Chen arrived in front of the golden-haired monkey. When the golden-haired monkey saw Yi-Chen suddenly appear in front of it, it jumped in fright. Its pupils shrank, and all the fur on its body stood on end. Little monkey, greets ye. Lord Yi. The golden-haired monkey tried its best to stabilize its heart, which was beating even more violently. Then, it bowed to Yi-Chen while trembling. It learned the etiquette of the human race. Although it looked neither fish nor fowl, it was quite similar. When Yi-Chen heard this, he glanced at the golden-haired monkey who was fighting Zhang Ku and said, "Hand over your treasures. You only have one chance." Yi-Chen asked the golden-haired monkey to hand over the treasure. At first glance, it looked like Yi-Chen knew that the golden-haired monkey had a treasure. In reality, that wasn't the case, because Yi-Chen wasn't sure if the golden-haired monkey in front of him had a treasure. And Yi-Chen's words were just to scare the monkey. To be more precise, Yi-Chen wasn't sure if this golden-haired monkey was the monkey who had obtained the Tree of Enlightenment in his previous life. If it was, then it was very likely that this golden-haired monkey had a treasure. Moreover, it was a treasure that could take away the Tree of Enlightenment. After all, when the Tree of Enlightenment appeared in Yi-Chen's previous life, it wasn't here. It was on an island in the vast sea. Therefore, the Tree of Enlightenment had been transplanted in Yi-Chen's previous life, and it was very difficult to transplant a 100-meter-tall Tree of Enlightenment without the help of a treasure. Therefore, if the golden-haired monkey was the monkey who had obtained the Tree of Enlightenment in his previous life, then it was very likely that it had a treasure. And this was also the main reason why Yi-Chen wanted the golden-haired monkey to hand over the treasure. Although all of this was Yi-Chen's guess, it didn't stop Yi-Chen from wanting to plunder the treasure. Of course, even if the golden-haired monkey here wasn't the monkey who had obtained the Tree of Enlightenment in his previous life, Yi-Chen didn't care. It was just a waste of 1 or 2 minutes. When the golden-haired monkey heard Yi-Chen's threatening words, its monkey face instantly revealed a shocked expression. When Yi-Chen saw this, he couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. Then, with a wave of his right hand, the black and thick Godslayer instantly appeared. When the golden-haired monkey saw Yi-Chen suddenly take out the big spear that all the shifter players were afraid of, it couldn't help but shudder. Then, it hurriedly shouted, "I'll hand it over! I'll hand it over!" At this moment, the golden-haired monkey's heart was filled with bitterness and regret. It had only noticed that after the giant golden bird left, it hadn't returned for a long time, so it hurried over to take advantage of the situation and see if it could dig up the Tree of Enlightenment. But would have thought that not only would it fail to take advantage of the situation, but it would also encounter Yi-Chen, a monster that all the shifter players were afraid of. If this was already enough to make the golden-haired monkey feel that it was unlucky, then Yi-Chen's robbery was enough to make the golden-haired monkey's heart bleed. It couldn't be helped. Yi-Chen was too strong. The golden-haired monkey wasn't a match for Yi-Chen. If it didn't want to die, it could only do as Yi-Chen asked. The golden-haired monkey thought bitterly. With a wave of its paw, a seed the size of an infant's fist and covered in starry patterns instantly appeared in the golden-haired monkey's paw. When Yi-Chen saw the seed in the golden-haired monkey's paw, he couldn't help but be stunned. Yi-Chen had guessed that the golden-haired monkey might be the monkey that had obtained the Tree of Enlightenment in his previous life. He even deduced that the golden-haired monkey might have a treasure. In the end, Yi-Chen's guess wasn't confirmed, but his deduction came true. However, Yi-Chen never would have thought that the golden-haired monkey would actually use a seed as a treasure. Damn it, it really thinks I'm easy to fool. Just as Yi-Chen thought up to this point, the seed covered in starry patterns suddenly flashed with a bright light. Sensing this, Yi-Chen was stunned. Then, he looked at the seed in the golden-haired monkey's paw again. In the next second, Yi-Chen's eyes widened. Holy shit, the seed of the world tree. It was no wonder that Yi-Chen was so shocked. Even Yi-Chen didn't expect that the golden-haired monkey's treasure wasn't a spatial treasure like he had imagined, but a seed of the world tree. What was the world tree? It was a chaos-grade spiritual material with the ability to create a world. The seed of the world tree also had this ability. Of course, in order for the seed of the world tree to truly create a world, it had to mature and become a world tree. However, this wasn't important. What was important was that the seed of the world tree could be refined. Once someone refined the seed of the world tree, the person who refined the seed of the world tree would automatically obtain a world. Although it would start out as a small space, this small space would eventually grow into a world. Once a person had a world, they could directly use the world's energy to support their battle. They could even use the world's energy to suppress their enemies and kill them. It could be said that people who had a world could fight longer and fiercer than others. It was also very difficult to kill them. It was also for this reason that countless powerhouses in the Eldritch world wanted to obtain the seed of the world tree and create their own world. Unfortunately, only 9 seeds of the world tree would appear in every Yuanhui. Moreover, once the seed matured, it would automatically break through space and escape to other places. Therefore, in the end, not many people had obtained the seed of the world tree. Now, the golden-haired monkey actually took out a seed of the world tree. How could Yi Chen not be shocked and excited? Damn it, when the meteor fell, how many good things would fall on Earth? Chapter 607. Thinking of this, Yi Chen waved his left hand in the air. Whoosh! A sound was heard. The seed of the world tree in the golden-haired monkey's hand instantly flew in front of Yi Chen and was then caught by Yi Chen. Carefully looking at the seed of the world tree, Yi Chen nodded in satisfaction and then looked at the golden-haired monkey. Unexpectedly, just as Yi Chen was about to speak, the golden-haired monkey knelt on the ground with a plop and then bowed to Yi Chen respectfully. This little monkey is willing to submit. Please take me in, Lord Yi. When Yi Chen heard this, he couldn't help but be stunned. However, Yi Chen didn't expect this golden-haired monkey's perception to be so sharp. As soon as he had the intention to kill, the golden-haired monkey took the initiative to submit. If it were a spiritual beast, Yi Chen would accept it. After all, spiritual beasts could recognize a master. However, the golden-haired monkey was a demon. It was neither an immortal beast nor a spiritual beast. It couldn't recognize a master at all. Just as Yi Chen thought of this, the golden-haired monkey spoke again. Lord Yi, this little monkey was originally a spiritual beast. It was just that I couldn't resist using blood to cultivate, so my spiritual beast bloodline was suppressed. Therefore, this little monkey can recognize a master. When Yi Chen heard this, he was slightly stunned. Then he moved his divine sense and directly probed the golden-haired monkey. Spiritual beasts were a branch of the demon race. To be precise, spiritual beasts were actually part of the demon race. However, spiritual beasts were different from the orthodox demon race. They could recognize a master and never used blood to cultivate. Once a spiritual beast used blood to cultivate, it would automatically produce a demon aura. Then, it would suppress the spiritual beast's bloodline and gradually assimilate it. Finally, the spiritual beast's bloodline would completely disappear. When the spiritual beast's bloodline completely disappeared, the spiritual beast would completely become an orthodox demon race. Yi Chen naturally knew this, but this was what the golden-haired monkey said. Yi Chen naturally couldn't believe it. Sensing that its body was being examined by divine sense, the golden-haired monkey couldn't help but stiffen. It couldn't be helped. No matter if it was a human or a demon, they naturally didn't like having their body probed by divine sense. However, the golden-haired monkey immediately relaxed and allowed Yi Chen to inspect it, because it knew that if it resisted, it would definitely end up in a miserable state. When Yi Chen saw that the golden-haired monkey had completely relaxed, he immediately believed the golden-haired monkey. However, Yi Chen still didn't stop inspecting the golden-haired monkey. The reason Yi Chen did this was to confirm whether the golden-haired monkey was a spirit beast or not. After all, Yi Chen was the most powerful person in the human race. Moreover, with his strength alone, he had suppressed the Yao clan to the point where they couldn't raise their heads. To be able to follow such a powerful person, it would be difficult for its future not to be bright. When Yi Chun heard the golden-haired monkey's words, he nodded in satisfaction. Then, he looked at the golden-haired monkey and said, "Then, you will now disperse your cultivation. Then, I will use lightning to completely destroy the remaining Yao Qi in your body. The entire process will be very painful. You must be prepared." "Yes, Lord Yi." When the golden-haired monkey heard this, it quickly replied and closed its eyes. After a few breaths, the golden-haired monkey suddenly opened its eyes. Then, its face turned red and it spat out a mouthful of blood. At this moment, the golden-haired monkey's aura dropped rapidly. Then, it quickly fell to the beginner level of a beast. When Yi Chun saw this, he smiled and pointed at the golden-haired monkey. Kaboom! Dense, thunderous sounds could be heard instantly. At the same time, countless small lightning bolts appeared out of nowhere and fell on the golden-haired monkey. In the next second, the golden-haired monkey suddenly let out an extremely miserable cry. Roar, bang! There was a sound. The golden-haired monkey fell to the ground and then kept on twitching. As time passed by, as the golden-haired monkey twitched, traces of gray gas were emitted from the golden-haired monkey's body and then scattered with the wind. This was the remaining Yao Qi in the golden-haired monkey's body. It was a special gas that appeared after being struck by lightning. When the last trace of gray gas was emitted from the golden-haired monkey's body, an extremely faint spiritual beast aura suddenly appeared from the golden-haired monkey. Seeing this, Yi Chun couldn't help but smile. Then, he flicked his finger. In the next second, a drop of essence blood flew out from Yi Chun's finger and landed on the golden-haired monkey's head. The golden-haired monkey, who was so weak that it didn't even want to move, saw this and quickly took the initiative to accept Yi Chun's essence blood. In the blink of an eye, Yi Chun's essence blood was completely absorbed. In the next second, the golden-haired monkey's body emitted a red light. At the same time, a mysterious connection appeared between Yi Chun and the golden-haired monkey. At this moment, the system notification sounded. Ding! Congratulations to player Yi Chun for successfully taming the special spiritual beast, the golden-haired monkey. Because it has the bloodline of the six-eared macaque, the special storyline mission, the 4 great spiritual monkeys, has been automatically activated. Ding! Player Yi Chun must make the 4 great spiritual monkeys recognize him as their master within 10,000 years. If he succeeds, he will be rewarded with the Great Path Fusion Pearl X1. If he fails, all spiritual pets will die. Any of player Yi Chun's attributes will be reduced to 0. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.